however, I'm trying to argue that all self-identity should be limited. So on International Women's Day, I would now like to identify as a black lesbian. And she was completely horrified and said, but that's ridiculous. I said, yeah, that's the point. Is that if you have limited self-identity, the logical conclusion of that journey is to the ridiculous.
True, but there are limits to what can be self-identity, and those limits are gender. So you can identify, or sex, actually, biological sex. Let me not confuse them. But you can, I think there was a big kerfuffle about this a couple of years ago when Rebecca Tuvell wrote an article in a philosophy journal saying that there's no substantive ethical difference between claiming that you're a member of a different race or claiming that you're a member of a different sex that you're born with. And she's right, as far as I can determine, but the first one is anathema, the second one is applauded. I don't know why that is. There's just something about the nature of sex that makes it almost untouchable to question.
Is it, in your estimation, Professor, is there any way for a biological man to become a woman?
No. They can say they're a woman, and I will respect their self-identification to the extent of using she and their preferred pronoun. But as a biologist, no. That will not happen until you're able to transplant the gonads of a male into a female, or vice versa, because the biological definition of sex is based on the reproductive apparatus that can produce either sperm or eggs. And so you can't change that in a human.
And when you see, for example, the fiasco, as I would call it, of people who were born biological men competing in women's sports, trans women, and destroying sports women, because obviously they have superior physiology, which reminds everybody why we separate the sexes in the Olympics, for example.
Yes.
I mean, what would you feel as a professor who studied all this?
About that?
Yeah, about that in particular, yeah.
Well, I made it pretty clear that, well, let me start off with the caveat that I think trans people deserve all the ideological, moral, and ethical rights as anybody else.
Yeah.
I'm not a transphobe, although I've been tarred with that.
Yeah, I don't think that's
except that there are situations that hold for trans people that don't hold for, say, gays, and that's that there are a clash of rights that transgender people have against other groups like women. So there are so-called women's spaces that you have to carve out some of the rights from transgender people to give rights to other groups like women. I mean, it's women mostly that come into play here, not men. And one of those is sports. You simply cannot allow somebody that's gone through male puberty to compete against a biological woman.
Well, you never read, do you, about trans men dominating
that's because
in men's sport. It never happens, because they can't.
Well, yes, that's true. And so people have proposed that we have an open category that comprises men, trans men, and people of indeterminate gender, and that will be the second category, and biological women is the other. I think that's a pretty good solution. Nevertheless, some men's sports have banned women on the grounds, or trans men, i.e. biological women, on the grounds that they could get hurt.
Yes, of
and
course.
World Rugby has done that.
Yeah, quite rightly. Yeah. I mean, I always will use the argument, look, if Mike Tyson or Floyd Mayweather suddenly put their hand up and said, I'm now a woman, would we allow them into a ring, even if they were paired against a woman, a biological female woman, an actual woman, who weighed the same? No, because the physiology of the bone mass, lung capacity, the strength, the power, everything, and every metric you could think of, obviously Mike Tyson and Floyd Mayweather would probably kill that woman in a ring. We saw it in the Paris Olympics with the Algerian Imam Khalif, who no one's quite sure what the reality is in that situation, but it appears that she was banned from the World Championships for having male chromosomes. But a woman who fought against her in an early round quit after 40 seconds, saying she'd never been hit that hard in her entire career. So this is dangerous now. Well, the ideology, and I totally agree with you, it's right to the point where trans rights start to erode existing women's rights to safety, to equality, to fairness. That is the problem. It's not about wanting trans people to have fairness and equality. Of course I do. And I want them to be safe. I just don't want women's rights to those things to be trampled on in the process. And when I see the scene like we saw in the Olympics of this poor boxer literally throwing the towel in after 40 seconds because they couldn't stomach or withstand the pain of being hit that hard by somebody who is almost certainly more a biological man than woman, you realise how dangerous this becomes.
Yeah, it's probably unfair. I mean, this is why, if you ask Americans as a whole, whether they think that biological men, i.e. trans women who identify as women, should be competing with biological women in sports, 70% of them say no. So that, I mean, there's a sea change now happening in which a formerly taboo subject can now be discussed openly. And that's what I tried to do in my article, which was censored by the FFRF. And unfortunately, I'm receiving more hate mail now for that than I ever have in my life. Most people calling me a transphobe. I don't hate trans people. I'm just trying to adjudicate the clash of rights that's going to be inevitable when you have this kind of thing happening.
And you're completely right. And the people who hate you are completely wrong. I had Neil deGrasse Tyson on recently, the astrophysicist, and I asked him about this issue. He gave an extraordinary response, which did lead to him being mocked quite widely. This is about the whole transport.
Sale is on at Yes with fantastic offers. Save up to 60%. Yes, Scandinavian Sleeping and Living.
Windows Maps doet succes. Krijgsrekening van dat en...
Our financial health check tool gives you a quick and easy review of your personal finances in just 5 minutes. We can equip you with helpful tips and next steps to improve your overall financial well-being. So, what are you waiting for? Plan your future now.
The future of sports does not distinguish sex. It distinguishes and sorts people by hormone ratios. I'm making this up, but imagine that, if that were the case. That would be interesting. You get a hormone test, you're in this range, and then you compete against other people with the same range of
That's
hormones.
ridiculous. Well, what did you make of that?
Yeah, unfortunately, he's very wrong because they did use hormone tests in the Olympics and in other sports competitions, and that's the way they distinguish the two groups. But it's proven now that that isn't correct. But if you go through puberty and you take hormone supplements, it doesn't matter because the advantages that you gain at puberty,
Yes.
and I'm talking about male puberty, the strength advantages, the bone advantages, the muscle advantages, those seem to stay with you for years, if not the rest of your life.
Forever.
And so
Yeah.
you can take as much testosterone as you want, but that's not going to eliminate palpable physical advantages of males over females, or trans women over
Right.
women.
But when you see someone, as eminent as Neil deGrasse Tyson, a proper scientist, when he says that kind of thing, what do you feel?
Well, my first reaction is charitable. I'll say he's a physicist, he's not a biologist, and he's not aware of the literature looking at the strength and the athletic abilities of trans women to say something like that. And 70% of Americans would disagree with him. I mean, they can see the unfairness. They can see that there are two sexes, and this is probably one reason why that played into the Democratic defeat in the election,
Yeah.
is that the Democrats tend to be progressive, the extremists. I'm a Democrat, but I'm more centrist and I hope more rational. The Democrats were telling people things that they could see were not true.
Yeah.
That there were more than two sexes. You know?
No, I agree.
Men and women have equal athletic abilities, things like that, which.
You know,
simply
the most
false.
successful political ad in recent times was the one that the Trump campaign put up, which ends with Kamala Harris is for they, them, and Donald Trump is for you. And it included the issue of transport in the 30-second commercial. They reckon it moved the needle 3 points because it resonated with most Americans were like, well, yes, of course.
Yes, that's very clever. It's not clear how much role that played, but it's also clear the Democrats had nothing to counter that ad with.
No, well they couldn't because no one was on record as supporting all this nonsense. So the scientific case for trans was outlined in a Scientific America article called "Stop Using Phony Science to Justify Transphobia." They argued there is bigotry in the position adopted by Richard Dawkins, Stephen Pinker, and yourself. And I want to go through some of the stuff they said. They said the popular belief that your sex arises only from your chromosomal makeup is wrong. The truth is your biological sex isn't carved in stone, but a living system with the potential for change. A half century of empirical research has repeatedly challenged the idea that brain biology is simply XY equals male brain or XX equals female brain. In other words, there's no such thing as the male brain or the female brain. The science is clear and conclusive. Sex is not binary. Transgender people are real. It's time we acknowledge this. Defining a person's sex identity using decontextualized facts, in inverted commas, is unscientific and dehumanizing. What do you make of that?
Well, I would say, what a thicket of weeds we have to hack our way through in that sense. I mean, there's so many things wrong with it. So I'll just single out two. First of all, sex is binary. They have males and females. They're defined by the types of gametes they produce, sperm versus eggs, or the reproductive apparatus to produce sperm eggs. If you're a sterile male, you're still a male. And so sex is binary. The proportion of exceptions to that in the human species is between 1 in 5,600 and 1 in 20,000. So basically, it's binary. The chance that you're non-binary is the same as the chance of tossing a quarter in the air and having it land on its edge. And when people, the people that say that sex is a spectrum, when they toss a coin, they don't say, call it heads, tails, or edge. I mean, they recognize that basically there's two outcomes, and the intermediates are minuscule. Now, that's not to say that these intermediates should be demonized or erased or dumped on in any way. As I said, I'm not a transphobe. But you have to recognize that sex comes in two forms. So that's the first problem with that. The other one is, and I noticed this immediately when I read this article, they say that there's no such thing as a male brain or a female brain. And yet they say that trans people have brains that are intermediate between male and female brains. Well, you can't maintain both of those positions at the same time. In fact, the science of male versus female brains is in flux. And especially the science of people who claim to be of intermediate genders in flux. It's not clear whether trans people do have intermediate brains, if there is such a thing as brain differences, or if those trans people that do show intermediate, you see, are really gay people who say that they're trans. And there's a difference between being trans and being gay.
So yeah, but how would you describe that difference from a biological perspective?
Well, trans, you feel like they're born in the wrong body, and you want to assume the other body. And I'm not denying that those people exist either. I think they really do. I don't know when it starts, this feeling of, being in the wrong body, and so therefore, and some of those people try to assume the features of the body they were not born in. So they'll have surgery, they'll have top surgery, they'll have bottom surgery, they'll take hormones, they'll shave, etc. But some of them don't. Some trans women, for example, who are biological men, will just present as biological men and have, beards and things like that. Whereas a gay person is somebody, or a gay male, or a gay female, or somebody who has a sexual attraction to members of their own natal sex. It has nothing to do with feeling like you're in the wrong body. It has to do with who you're sexually attracted to. Now, they can be connected, if you feel like you are attracted to men, if you're gay, and maybe you want to have sex with men, and you think you'll have more sex with men if you look like a woman, then you could say that you're trans and undergo that kind of transformation. But really, they're two different things.
I mean, what people on the other side of the argument say, they say, we haven't found a gene for homosexuality, but that doesn't mean it doesn't exist. Why should transsexuality be different?
Well, I mean, we just don't know. I'm pretty sure because every biological characteristic that differs among people has some genetic basis, although sometimes it's very tiny. But we don't know much about the genetics of homosexuality. I think there is some evidence that being gay does have some genetic basis. That's supported by the fact that that a lot of gay people feel that they're attracted to same sex from a very young age, and it maintains itself throughout puberty and up into adulthood. About being trans, we have no information yet because it's such a new feature of human sociology about the genetic basis of it. It could well be that there is a genetic basis for it, but remember, if there's only a small genetic basis for something, then biologists would tend to ignore it. Moreover, the degree of genetic basis of a trait says nothing about how much you can transform that trait by social intervention, for example.
When this whole fracas, as you put it, blew up, I mean, when you were talking to Richard Dawkins and Stephen Pinker about what was going on, were you all equally kind of bemused, baffled, or how do you categorize your thinking about it?
Well, sandbag would be the American word for it, because we had no idea this would happen. We're all on the honorary board of the Freedom from Religion Foundation, and we have in the past warned them that they're widening their mission, going outside their mission, by dealing with things that don't involve church-state separation, which is the purview of the FFRF. It's to enforce the First Amendment, to keep church and state separate. But they started getting into the so-called woke ideology, transgender politics, things like that, which don't really have much to do with church-state separation. And we warned them about that twice, and in this case, in which they published an essay saying that sex is whatever you feel it to be, a woman is whoever she says she is, that was too much, because we all are science friendly, and we know that the definition of a woman, and you can look it up in the Oxford English Dictionary, which I regard as sort of the Bible of linguistics used to use a religious metaphor. It defines a woman as an adult human female, and it defines female and male based on the types of sperm or eggs they have. And so, we were all upset about this. I was allowed to write a counter to this self-definition of male or female, and they published it. And as I wrote in my essay, they let it stay up for a day before they decided it was hurtful, and they removed it, censored it right off the internet. And none of us like this kind of censorious behavior. We believe in the value of free expression, of the clash of ideas, the John Stuart Mill view that if ideas clash, the truth will eventually emerge. And so, when they took it down, I decided I should resign, and Steve and Richard independently decided to resign. And so we did. And I just discovered yesterday, there were 18 of us on this honorary board of the organization, chosen because of our accomplishments at keeping church and state separate, that 3 of us resigned, me, Richard, and Steve, and the FFRF decided, okay, we're going to get rid of the rest of them, which I thought was a pretty crazy thing to do, because it eliminates the meritorious aspect of their sponsorship. But 15 other people bit the dust yesterday.
Extraordinary.
I just couldn't believe that. Really took me for a loop. I think they did it. I don't know what their psychology is, so that this kind of thing could not happen again, that you would not get pushback from intellectuals and scientists.
It's completely preposterous, isn't it? I mean, the whole point of being an intellectual or a scientist or a professor is you push back on stuff, right? You challenge,
yes.
You challenge conventional norm, and you ask questions.
Yeah, I was told later that we weren't supposed to do anything on this board, but I felt that my purview was not to constantly intervene in the organization's doings, but when they went off the rails, I would try to slightly correct them and put them back on the track again. But when I tried to do it, it just blew up in my face, and unfortunately, I had to resign. I didn't want to. I still think, and I should emphasize this, that the Freedom from Religion Foundation is a good organization that in the main does very good things, because after all, the First Amendment to the American Constitution is to keep church and state separate. And that's what they do. That's the main thing, and to educate the public about this kind of thing. But when they start getting into woke ideology, that's when they start jumping the rails. And this elimination of the honorary board seems to me to be typical of wokeness.
Yeah.
Because when merit clashes with ideology, in wokeness, it's always the merit that gets discarded.
Yeah.
This is why, for example, in America, the SATs and ACTs, indices of how you did in high school, have been eliminated in many schools as criteria for getting into college, because it's merit that conflicted with ideology, which is to create equity in colleges.
You said you've had a lot of hate and stuff. Have you had death threats as well?
Yes. More or less. I was told, I don't know if I can use this word in your show, I'll try. I think it's fair.
Okay.
I was told that I should fillet a shotgun. I.e. put a shotgun in my mouth and fire it. And I have other such emails. That's not really a death threat. But it's a warning that the guy didn't like what I said and I should kill myself.
Unbelievable.
And I get called transphobe on a daily basis, merely for saying that the rights of trans people and the rights of cis people are going to come into conflict sometimes, and they have to be adjudicated. Merely saying that is enough to get you deemed as someone who hates trans people, and indeed who wants trans people eliminated from the planet, which is the furthest thing from my mind.
Yeah. It's been great to talk to you, Professor. Thank you very much indeed.
My pleasure.
Well, here's a debate what we're just listening to, whether gender ideology has a future. Executive Director from the progressive organisation Rebelling Pack, Leanna Wu, trans rights activist Eli Ehrlich, and host of Tommy Lowe and his fearless Outkick, Tommy Lowe. Welcome to all of you. Eli, we heard it pretty well there from the professor that from a biological point of view, never mind anything else, from a straight, scientific, biological point of view, a man cannot be a woman. What is your response to that?
He is completely unscientific and so bound up in his ideology that he isn't even paying attention to the vast majority of biologists, including those from the American Academy of Sciences, who disagree with them and do acknowledge that sex describes a variety of different characteristics that can be changed.
Do you not accept, there's a reason, for example, that we separate the sexes at the Olympics. It's because there is a presumption based on reality, facts, data, that biological men are superior in almost every physical way imaginable. They're more powerful, they're faster, they're stronger, they have greater lung capacity, and that if you didn't separate the sexes, if you took this to its logical extension, where biological men who become trans women start to just compete in the Olympics or in a free-for-all, a gender-neutral Olympics, then biological women would simply never win a medal again.
There has never been a trans woman who has won a gold in the Olympics.
Hang on. We literally just had at the Paris Olympics the Algerian boxer, welterweight.
She's not a trans woman.
I'm about to tell you what
For all that we know, she is intersex.
all we know is she was banned from the World Championships the year before because she reportedly tested positive for male chromosomes. Now,
again, this does not mean she's a trans woman.
Why doesn't she just take a simple sex test and show us?
We can't speculate about someone's.
Actually, we can. We can when they win gold medals. Because you just said it's never happened. When a woman, who says she's a woman, wins a gold medal in a women's sport, and when one of the female competitors who competed against her in an earlier round said she had to quit after 40 seconds because she'd never been hit that hard. Damn right we can ask some difficult questions, even if it tramples on a few little oversensitive feelings. It is ridiculous. There was no sex test.
Said she supports a man who believes right to participate.
Why didn't she have a sex test to clear this up?
Again, I can't speculate about someone's gender.
Would you not support having sex tests? It's the easiest way to determine somebody's sex. You give them a test.
I think, like Neil deGrasse Tyson said, that we should have different levels of competition.
How? Explain to me how that would work.
There are different metrics, and this would depend sport by sport. Most sports now do allow trans women to compete. I also do want to correct something too, that there have been several trans men who have won in male competitions at the global level.
What was the competition?
This includes everything from rugby to swimming.
Rugby? You think there's a trans man who's beaten all the men at rugby?
I'm not saying that a trans man is the best person in the world, the best rugby player in the world, but there are plenty of trans men who have competed at the global level.
Yeah,
This is very
actually,
easy to
there aren't
Google.
plenty. There are very, very few. And what they don't do is they don't win because they're physically inferior. Tommy Laren, I mean,
Again,
okay, let me bring in Tommy. We've got two other panels. Tommy, look, to me, it's a simple question of biology, as you heard from the professor. And when I hear, with all due respect to Eli, I absolutely respect your right to have your opinion. But I just think it's flying in the face of basic facts.
It is, and Pierce, I wonder, is it going to take a female athlete being seriously injured or even killed for people to understand how serious this is? It has nothing to do with transphobia and bringing up trans men or biological women who are competing against men because they are trans men, whatever the terminology is for all of that. You don't see the outrage at that because, as you mentioned, Pierce, they're not winning. They're not crushing the competition, and if they have, it's in very, very few cases that are negligible. What you're seeing also, you're not seeing the outrage about that because it's very few cases, I haven't heard of any, where trans men, biological women who are transitioning to men, want to be in men's locker rooms, that want to make men feel uncomfortable while they're changing, being in their changing space, watching them undress. So it's a completely different situation. And when you ignore not only biology, but when you ignore gender itself, why should biological women, and I don't even like saying that, Piers, I don't like even referring to myself as a biological woman. I'm a woman, okay? I was born that way. I don't like having to preface that with what I am biologically. I'm a woman. Why should we and other women like me have to put up with competing against men or having men in our locker rooms, men in our restroom, because it makes a very, very small segment of the population feel better about themselves? Why do their feelings trump the feelings of women?
Yeah.
That's what I don't understand in this argument, in this debate.
No, I don't. Brianna, as a professor said,
Shop at Europe's largest factory in furniture, or iPhones work like me. Visit swappy.ie today.
these are death threats. People want to be dead simply because, as a biologist, he spells out the bleeding obvious factual realities of this. And as he points out, he's not remotely transphobic, nor am I. I want trans people to have exactly the same rights to fairness, equality, and safety that I enjoy. I've always said.
how is it equality if we don't have the same
Hold on, Eli.
I'll answer the question, but let Brianna answer. But here's the point. It doesn't make you transphobic if you actually don't want to see women's rights eroded in the process.
Of course it doesn't, Pierce. This is the whole problem. Eli and her trans fringe freak show friends are threatening anyone that disagrees with them. I, as a trans woman, have dealt with their dumb threats constantly since just standing up and trying to say, we've got to have some common sense conversations about this. There's nothing he said in that interview that is remotely transphobic.
No.
And the thing is, he is in the middle, Pierce. He is in the middle. And what is happening with this brain dead progressive fringe movement is they are taking Democrats that would be on our side, that want to have trans rights protected. They are turning it into the enemy, and they are destroying these organizations so they can't stand against the Republicans that want to take away everything. They are annihilating our defenses. And Eli, I really want to know, this is my direct question for you. When does this brilliant progressive plan you have for trans rights, when does this curve kick in and we start winning elections again? Because My generation had this for years. It was progress that you enjoyed when you had your stuff paid for. When do all your brilliant ideas kick in when we start winning elections again? Because you're destroying our entire movement. You're doing things like giving
This is
hormones
exact-
to children. You were giving hormones to children online. You put together a network for this. You lied about it in the aftermath. When did your ideas start working, Eli?
Yeah,
We heard this exact same rhetoric during the civil
When did
rights
your
movement,
ideas
the
start
gay rights
working? What is the
movement.
point?
It's-
When did they start working?
Progress takes time, you know this, and we've talked before. It does take time, and we can't cut into the rights of anyone. Trying to throw anyone under the bus means that we erode all rights. And we've seen this already with the Supreme Court knocking down certain transgender rights. Next comes abortion, then comes cisgender women's rights, then comes free speech. We've seen it over and over again. We've seen it with the civil rights movement, we've seen it with the gay rights movement of the 1960s to 80s. There's going to be
So
this
just
period
that's
of
time. That's your answer. Just keep waiting with these brain dead tactics. They're losing elections. Trump is back in office with your playbook. Your playbook. You put Trump back in
Kamala
office.
wouldn't even say the word
That
transgender, I really don't think that's very
and you
progressive.
know what she did do, you know what she did do?
That happened.
Hang on a minute, I mean, what Kamala Harris did do, she and President Biden both supported having trans women in women's sport. And that was part of the most successful political ad in recent memory, as I said to the professor, when you had an ad that ended up, Kamala for they then, Donald Trump's for you. That was deemed to be the most effective ad in modern political American history. At some point, Eli, you gotta look at yourself and think, wow, our campaign isn't working. Telling people that it's okay for biological men to come into women's sport and be massively more successful as women than they ever were as men, which is what happens in almost every single case. That is not fair. It's not equal. It's not right. It's cheating. And if you don't think it is, and you try and pretend it isn't, eventually, as we saw, most Americans wake up and go, bullshit. I'm going to vote for Trump even though I don't like him, because he'll stop this madness. And I simply say to you, I want all trans people to have fairness, equality, and safety. Why would you jeopardize all that at the altar of such obviously unfair, unequal, unsafe bullshit? Genuinely.
If you actually look at the polls, the most popular, the most important electoral issue for people, it wasn't trans people. That was about 1%.
I didn't say it was, but I did say the advert I talked about was the most successful in modern times. The New York Times, a liberal progressive newspaper, concluded it may have moved the needle by 3 points. Right? That was the damage.
The New York
The
Times
damage
is
that
not
Kamala
liberal
Harris's
or
pro-trans
progressive
bullshit
on
had
trans
caused.
issues.
She can't answer, Pierce. She can't answer. She will not defend these brain dead tactics. You know, Pierce, I don't want to go compete against Tony in sports. I want to go have lunch uptown with her and like, talk about normal stuff.
Right.
That's why I transitioned to just have a normal life. Eli is out there pushing this narrative that science doesn't matter, that sex doesn't matter, that we can just roll into every space. She claims to be a feminist, but she doesn't want to make any common sense compromises with the women she says she speaks for.
Yeah, and we see, as we saw, right, as we saw with J.K. Rowling, we saw with the professor, we see with everyone. I've had it, when you poke your head over this, Tommy, and you say this stuff, the trans lobby, let's just use the collective phrase, I'm not saying they're all like this, by any means, I'm not even giving you like, but the abuse, the threats, the viciousness, the calls to be cancelled, the targeting of your employment, of your bosses, and so on. It's so insidious, and to me, it's so self-harming to the cause. I know people who are trans, who are very quiet, want to get on with their lives. They don't want all this nonsense. They don't want the trans lobby trying to pretend it's fine for trans women to be in women's sport, because they know everybody laughs at it and makes them a laughing stock. They just want to lead their lives, like the rest of us. And I wish they could, without being dragged into this crap.
Yeah, I'm curious, look no further than the way that Caitlyn Jenner is treated by the left and by many in the LGBTQ rainbow mafia, as I call them. That is that far left fringe part of the LGBTQ movement that is seemingly louder than the rest of the movement, and that's really unfortunate. But I'll tell you, here's what I think a lot of this comes down to. I think that there are a lot of activists and a lot of activist organizations out there that make a lot of money on this issue. And if it were not for this controversy, if it were not for them continuing to encroach on women's rights and women's sports and women's spaces, they wouldn't have a job title, they wouldn't have a crusade, they wouldn't be able to fundraise. So whereas many people are completely fine with LGBTQ, they support it, people living their lives, I'm one of those people. Once you start pushing people too far, you're going to get the backlash. But I don't think these activists mind the backlash. In fact, I think they thrive off of it, and I think they make their paychecks off of it because they love it. They love keeping this at the center of controversy. That's the only way a lot of these organizations can exist. That's the only way a lot of these nonprofits can exist. And that's the only way that some of these people can take huge salaries pretending to be and cosplaying to be advocates for the LGBTQ community. And it's really a shame.
And Tommy, what did you make of Mark Zuckerberg's extraordinary statement on all previous Facebook, Instagram policies about, including the gender issue? He said, we do allow now allegations of mental illness or abnormality when based on gender or sexual orientation, given political and religious discourse about transgenderism and homosexuality, and common non-serious usage of words like weird. These are revised company guidelines. Do you feel completely comfortable with that? I mean, do you think we should be encouraging people to say that all trans people are mentally ill or they're weird or whatever? Or do you think that slightly crosses the line of being fair and equal to them?
Well, listen, free speech is saying what you want to say. It's also hearing what you don't want to hear. There's plenty on these so-called free speech platforms that I don't like to see. I don't like to see transgenderism pushed on children, but unfortunately that's been in existence on Meta platforms and on TikTok for several years now. It's unfortunate. So I think we need to open up the other side of the conversation. I'm not all the way optimistic that Meta is actually going to do that. I mean, anytime we talk about even equality for women in women's sports and them being able to compete at a high level with other women, you're censored on Meta platforms. I know because I work for Outkick that talks about this issue a lot and is at the forefront of the issue. So I'm cautiously optimistic, but listen, I don't agree with bullying people, calling people mentally ill or weird. I don't personally do that. I don't like it. However, if you're going to have a platform that talks about both sides of the issue, you have to let the other side be able to speak as well. I'm hopeful that we can see that.
Yeah, and Eli, if you're getting professors who are not remotely transphobic, my last guest getting told to shoot themselves dead, filleted gun in their mouths, as he put it, what right does the other side have to then say, well, you can't use mean words like weird about us? Anyway.
Well, that's a huge generalization, Piers. I don't support anyone encouraging abuse or harm to anyone. And most trans people don't either. Like Brianna said, there is a very reactionary fringe who may engage in these very harmful behaviors and rhetoric. This doesn't represent all trans people. And surprisingly, I also find myself agreeing with Tommy that no, we should not have bullying on these platforms. And this means also not calling trans people weird. This new policy actually infringes on free speech because when I'm called mentally ill or weird, I stop engaging, and that obstructs my ability and willingness to speak. So what this policy is doing is discouraging queer and trans people, along with migrants who are also included in this policy, from speaking on their own behalf.
Yeah, I mean, I would say to that the behaviour of the extremists in the trans community has been a massive problem. With someone like J.K. Rowling, tried to have a reasonable debate about this and just got utterly bombarded with death threats. And the whole turf stuff and everything, all of it is ridiculous. It's all got to stop. You've got to calm everybody down and have a genuinely reasoned and sensible and calm debate about the reality, which is more and more trans women are now trying to compete in women's sport, for example, and that involves them using women's spaces and so on. Is that right and proper and fair, or does it erode women's rights? And if, as I would conclude, it erodes women's rights, what's the answer? So that trans women can still compete in sport in a way that doesn't trample other people's rights. That's all I want. Brianna, last word to you on this. I mean, the new Meta guidelines, I think they're long overdue just generally in the sense that so much stuff was getting censored that actually you couldn't say anything about anyone without someone somewhere trying to get you cancelled and often being thrown off social media. So do you welcome them broadly, or what do you feel about it?
Pierce, this is the fundamental problem, is when Eli and her fringe trans friends make all this stuff, they try to deny reality. They try to deny the reality. I'm a NATO male that transitioned to live as a woman. Most people call me she, her as I go about my day. That's fine. That's all I need. I don't need someone to have some existential belief that I'm a woman. I need them to let me have control of my own body and go get health care. What she has done and her playbook does is it elevates all these issues to like hidden knowledge. And they try to shut normal people up when they have questions about trans women in sports, or they have questions about calling themselves pregnant people. Like, it is just imposition after imposition. And we try to shut people up for so long, eventually they're just going to explode. And this is 100% what we're seeing on Facebook and the American system right now. We've got to stop trying to win debates by silencing them, and we need to come back with some facts. And here's a fact. There was a 2018 study that came out that showed that Eli and I both have protein receptors in how we process testosterone. This could be a reason about why we turned out the way that we did. We don't have to deny the reality of sex to admit that there's probably some sort of biological thing that's going on with both of us that makes us behave the way we do.
Right, and look,
Feel the way that we do. So
Yeah.
let's have an honest discussion about that.
I agree. And look, the bottom line is, if I'm transphobic, then why are 2/3 of this panel trans?
Right.
Eli? The last time I checked, told me you're
Representation
not
doesn't,
trans. Look, is it,
representation doesn't have anything to do with ideology.
You know what, it's
There's
just-
a lot of work to do in our community, and all progress gets some pushback, to answer Brianna.
yeah, look, it's a
It's
good
not an
debate.
answer. It's not a serious answer. You're not a serious person. We need to put some adults in charge of our movement. Again, it's embarrassing. You setting up a network to give children hormones illegally was hugely embarrassing. You should quit. You should stop doing everything you're doing and never talk about this issue again. Stop. You're hurting us.
Eli, you gonna stop?
Outside
Why
of
are you giving
the,
children hormones? I want an answer for that. Why are you setting up a network to give children hormones? illegally?
outside of the clear ad hominem.
Why are you doing
again,
that?
all
Just answer the
progress
question.
needs-
Don't give me bullshit. Why are
All
you doing that?
progress requires some pushback.
Why are you giving children?
We are going to
hormones?
need to keep on
Why are you
fighting
doing
if
this,
we
Eli?
want to see trans
Why did you set up the
trans
network
youth
to give
protected and
children
get the
hormones?
necessary health care that they need.
She can't answer. She's not a serious person, Pierce. This is not serious time.
I'm sorry, yelling over me isn't going to
You're
solve
not answering
anything.
the question. Why are you giving children hormones illegal? Why are you setting up networks to do this? Why?
So
This is a crime. I want to know why you're doing it. It really hurts us. It makes us look deranged. Why are you doing
Eli,
this?
why are you doing it?
well, this is gonna make some great TV. Look, when trans youth are denied necessary health care, we always have to step in. And right now, under very brave trans lawyers like Chase Strangio are in the Supreme Court fighting for trans kids because
Casey's gonna lose.
I actually
There's no
agree with
such thing
that.
as a trans kid.
Tommy?
That's very
There's
silly.
no such thing as a trans kid. That's child abuse. When you take somebody who's still growing up, figuring out who they are, doesn't know anything about sexuality and shouldn't at that young age, and you try to convince them that there's something other than what they were born to be, that's a problem. It's child abuse. That's my opinion. But also, you're talking about trans kids and their mental health. There was a study that was done about mental health for trans youth, and guess what? The results did not come back favorably, so they wanted to bury it, and that is a fact. So if you show me some data that shows that this gender affirming care is actually beneficial, let's see it. Because the one that was done that a lot of money was poured into came out the other way, and the community tried to bury it. So don't
That's
target
not quite
children.
correct.
If you want to talk about adults and trans rights for adults, that's fine. But leave children out of that. And that's what a lot of conservatives are simply asking for. Leave kids alone. Let them live their lives and figure out what they want to do when they're of age to make those kind of
Yeah,
decisions.
I completely. So we had an infamous clinic in London called the Palestine Clinic, where no one was allowed to criticise what they were doing, which was mutilating young kids. And it's shut down now in total disgrace and ignominy and shame. But you know what isn't shut down? The damage that was done to those kids. And I'm afraid that I agree with Tommy. I don't think any prepubescent child should ever be exposed to any of this nonsense. Let them go through
And money is
puberty.
not theirs.
Let them go through puberty and work out for themselves what kind of life they want. That's fine. But don't mutilate kids or treat them this way or pump them with hormones or puberty
I was
blockers.
one of those children, Piers, and
Yeah.
I'm an adult now, I'm very happy.
Good for
with
you,
the
but
vast
many,
majority
many,
of
many,
children are
many,
too.
many children were not. And many of them
The
have
vast
regretted.
majority were.
And many of them
When
regret
was
it. Have
I
you,
mean,
have you had kids,
anywhere
Eli?
between 1 and 2.
Eli, have you had kids?
That doesn't matter, I was one of those
So have
children.
you had kids? I'm asking you, are you a parent?
No, of course not.
Okay, so I've got 4
Except
kids.
for one
I've
beloved
got
cat.
4 kids and I know, and my brother had 4 kids, my sister had 4 kids. I've seen a lot of kids go through puberty. They change enormously in that process, in how they think. I've seen young girls who are tomboys who then completely change, having come out of puberty. Everything changes emotionally, psychologically, physically, and to try and tamper with that process, I think is a form of child abuse. I agree with Tommy.
Despite everyone being happier on the other side.
About that issue, we can figure that out. We do need much better studies. It's very clear the protocol is failing, which is why so many of these FTMs it does not serve them to get their own testosterone so quick. We should have a discussion about that. This is my issue, Pierce. That Eli's response to that was not to call for scientific funding, to not look at what the NIH is doing and to
We
open that
have the
to
funding
not
already,
call,
we
I'm
have
gonna
the
finish my
studies.
point, to not call for gender clinics to open up their data so we can actually see what's happening to these patients that are children. Her response was to go out and get a bunch of trans people to send these children hormones illegally, which is insane. It makes us look crazy. We've got to get some goddamn adults in charge of the trans rights movement again.
Yeah,
You make us look so stupid
I
and you
agree.
don't see it.
I agree with you, Brian. Thank God you're saying stuff like this. Eli, I appreciate you coming on Uncensored again. Thank you very much. Tommy, thank you very much. Always good to see you. Thank you, Brianna. Happy New Year to all of you. Let's end on a happy note.
Save 20 to 60% on selected indoor furniture. Yes, Scandinavian sleeping and living.
Why do we have to have a month?
The reason why is because it's people like you who don't understand why we really have it.
The LGBTQ plus community has over half a calendar year.
I don't like the flag. I think it's a piece of idiocy. I don't understand why it changes every bloody week. The gender affirming care movement, Nazi Auschwitz level awful.
You shouldn't even be giving that airtime. He says loads of nonsense.
You say loads of nonsense. I don't deplatform you. How many men have ovaries?
I have no idea, Perry. I'm not in that
How many?
situation.
No men
Here.
have ovaries.
Well, a lot of you on this panel believe that there is only one type of woman, which is cisgender women.
Oh, there's different
It's
types
not
of black
included in the
people.
conversation.
Oh, it's black is black.
Ernest, if I now identify as a black man, am I a black man?
Why are you conflating race and gender?
I'm just asking you a question, Ernest. Am I a black man if I say I'm a black man? Mothers, fathers, armed forces veterans, fallen soldiers, women, patron saints all have one thing in common. There's one calendar day per year held in their honour. Quite right too. There's always been a source of some confusion to me that simply being gay or part of the LGBTQ2+ community entitles you to an entire month. I'm of course referring to the holy month of Pride, which mandates 30 days of revelry in honour of, as I say, the LGBTQIA, apologies to A's, -2SL plus community. I have no idea what that means, but I'm very happy, very well, to lead the lives they want. And admittedly, after reading that aloud, it all makes a lot more sense. Or does it? Clearly, there's a day for every letter, but the serious point here is that this kind of enforced celebration of sexual preferences is, I think, becoming a little bit counterproductive. There are many millions of people, myself included, who couldn't give a damn what you do behind closed doors, or frankly, in front of open doors, and would rather not know about it either way. I don't care. Why should they be browbeaten and shamed for thinking they're bigots if they don't go on with enforced month-long celebrations? This is what happened when Adele called out a heckler, who reportedly shouted, "Pride sucks."
What was that? You just said pride sucks. You didn't come to my shoulder and say pride sucks. You
somebody who paid presumably very good money to be at that concert of hers in Vegas. It turns out the man didn't shout "Pride sucks" at all. He shouted "Work sucks," to which most people probably would have agreed with him, including something of the whining that she'd been in since she got the gig in Vegas, Adele. But maybe he's employed by the BMW marketing department, which has been busy fielding complaints this week about another recurring Pride problem: corporate hypocrisy. We can't make a dutifully change its logo on social media to reflect the Pride rainbow, keeping with many thousands of virtue signaling corporations across the Western world. The followers in the Middle East, where homosexuality is commemorated rather differently, got the plain old blue and white. After a backlash, BMW posted, "This is an established practice of the BMW Group, which takes into consideration market-specific legal regulations and country-specific cultural aspects." Well, there we have it then. These companies don't care about gay rights. They're not making a stand at all on any principled level. They're just adjusting their virtue signaling to amplify their virtue so they can sell a maximum number of products in any particular country of the world, regardless of what that country actually thinks about things like homosexuality. And there's a very unhappy marriage of Dylan Mulvaney and Bud Light shows. They will drop the cause like a flaming hot potato if it costs them money or any kind of backlash. Now, I fully support LGBT rights. I can only remember those four, so apologies to the rest. I always have. And I don't need a rainbow on my cereal box, credit card, sandwich, or beer to prove that. And I certainly don't need it for a month. In a moment, we'll debate all things Pride with tonight's panel, Esther Cracker, James Barr, and Ernest Owens. But first, return to Uncensored is Riley Gaines, whose new book appropriately is titled Swimming Against the Current, Fighting with Common Sense in the World. It's lost its mind. Well, Riley, great to have you back on Uncensored. How are you?
I'm doing great, Piers. It's great to be back on with you, so thank you.
Well, listen, you know, you're one of my heroines out there because you fight what's often been a very lonely battle against this kind of woke nonsense that's been happening, certainly in the sport that you were so accomplished in. Tell me the premise of the book.
Yes, it was a whirlwind. To be able to add author to my resume now is crazy. But the premise of the book, look, of course, a little background on me, what it takes to be an elite athlete, something that I think a lot of the people who are ultimately making the decisions, making these rules don't understand. More depth and count of what we went through at that national championships in regard to the unfair competition in the locker room, of course, the silencing that we faced. Again, something I don't think a lot of people understand. Why so few have been willing to put their name and their face to this. How we got here, the trajectory of where we're going, and what we as everyday people, common sense human beings who intuitively know that men and women are different, what we can do to combat this movement.
It is extraordinary to see what's happened in sport, but I do think that the woke worm is turning. I am beginning to feel like the silent mass majority are beginning to rise up and say enough of this. This has to be sorted a different way. When you see what's happened in swimming, in sprinting, in any sport that requires a fairness and equality around size and power and speed, which is of course determined largely by biological sex. It's why we separate the sexes for the Olympics, for example. I do feel the tide's turning, pardon the pun. Do you feel that?
100%. I feel more hopeful now than I felt in these past 2 years since I've taken this stand. I think parents are waking up. I think coaches, female athletes, medical professionals. I think your everyday person who otherwise maybe would have considered themselves apolitical, probably people who thought this never would impact them, their families. They're understanding now that no one is immune to this movement. It's infiltrated into all levels, whether that's corporate America, whether that's academia, of course, within our government, our media, what have you. And they're understanding it's up to us as everyday people to call out the hypocrisy and push back. So, yeah, I agree. I feel very hopeful at this point in time.
What do you feel about things like Pride Month? I mean, like I said, I support the LGBT community, always have done. But I find this whole idea of a whole month being set aside for celebrating Pride. I'm like, why? Why do we give 1 day to veterans of world wars and a month to gay people, for example? No harm intended on Mr. Barr here. I'm sure he'll be responding in kind to. But I have no issue with James and sexuality. But why not just celebrate it for a month?
I should say no issue with yours, please.
No,
But I would rather you didn't ram it down my throat all the time.
There's no danger of that happening, but I just wanted to, but to be clear, there's no straight month, right? There's no celebration of my sexuality, or ramming of anything people's face. But Riley, before we all lose the plot here, how do you feel about enforced virtue signaling, where if you don't go along with this, then you're kind of lambasted as a bigot? We see it in all sorts of different ways. I remember the George Floyd murder happened, a horrific thing which I wrote and spoken about a lot, about how horrific it was, and it had to affect real change, which it did. But that day when everyone was told to do a black square on their Instagram for a day, and I just didn't want to do it. And I instead posted a picture of myself in my local park with a bottle of rosé, and got completely annihilated by people who felt this meant I must therefore be a racist. And I was like, no, I spent all morning actually debating this on television. I wrote a column about it, and then I fancied a glass of rosé, and I fancied exercising my free speech rights to post a picture of said bottle of rosé on my Instagram. And yet I literally had my kids ring me, my sons, who were being bombarded with abuse. What is your father doing? Why isn't he doing the black square? And I feel the same about the backlash that comes to things like Pride Month. It's like if you don't go along with all this, somehow you must be homophobic, which I'm not. Your thoughts?
Right. No, I totally agree. I just want to know what posting a black square on Instagram, how that helps quite literally anybody. And yeah, to your point, Pierce, look, the Pride movement, it's not just one day, it's not just 1 month. The LGBTQ plus community has over half a calendar year in days. There's Trans Visibility Day, there's Asexual Awareness Day, there's Gender Fluid Day. I mean, I can't even keep up. And yeah, it's not even about that these days exist or that they're divisive, I think, in their true nature. The problem is, just as you said, the backlash, the risk, the threats that we face if we don't participate, or even if we dare to question this. And again, it's in every single realm of society. This has seemingly overtaken the public square. And I think the same sentiment you had, what people do behind closed doors, by all means, that's the beauty of living in America in my case. That's the beauty of where we live.
Of course.
But I don't want it to cost my taxpayer dollars, and I don't want to be forced to support this. Because as a Christian, I mean, I don't support it. But that doesn't mean I want to infringe on someone else's rights. Just as I don't want my rights as a woman.
Well, let me play a clip before we come to the rest of the pack. This is Jordan Peterson who's got into a fury over his video about Pride. Well, he says a sexually narcissistic movement headed for a fall because it's been taken over by the radical translogical cigarette.
There is a real tinge of narcissism, sexual narcissism, and trans-pushing, gender-affirming butchers and liars primarily target young people whose most likely outcome on the sexual front is homosexuality. I don't like the flag. I think it's a piece of idiocy. I don't understand why it changes every bloody week. And I think the surgery, the gender-affirming care movement, I think it is Nazi Auschwitz level awful.
Mr. Barr.
What is that positive gay man wearing? That is an abomination. That is a crazy load of absolute bullshit. I'm sorry. That is insane. How dare he say that about Auschwitz? Gay people were killed alongside Jewish people and disabled people in the Holocaust. That is disgusting, Piers. That is disgusting. You shouldn't even be giving that airtime.
Well, he's a very famous guy.
Yeah, but we shouldn't be listening to what he thinks. I mean, he says loads of nonsense.
You say loads of nonsense. I don't deplatform you.
No, I mean, I do agree. I agree with you, James. Wow. That, drawing likeness to Nazis and Auschwitz is a bit extreme. However, he does make a valid point that
He was talking specifically about
the butchery of gender affirming
That's what
care.
he was talking
I'm sorry, there is nothing positive about basically castrating people and chopping off their breasts and their sexual organs to try and affirm anything other than some deep psychological distress. And I think that's the point you should have made instead of comparing it to Auschwitz, because it doesn't always have to be compared to Auschwitz.
Everything that's been said here so far, I could write an essay about it. I have so much to say, and it's difficult to just respond to literally all of the insane things that have been coming out of your mouths over the last 10 minutes.
What was insane?
It would take. I do find behind closed doors.
What was
quite
it?
offensive.
Anything
I just
Hang on.
reply to Esther first?
You can.
I don't want to
Everything
disrespect
Riley
Riley.
ever says, people like you go, it's insane.
No.
Say, what is it she said that's insane?
It's a great question.
You want to move on?
No, I think what she said about how she doesn't agree with it, but whilst also saying, oh, I don't, well, that's not really
She doesn't have to
supportive, is
agree
it?
with you.
It's not supportive.
She
Well,
doesn't have to.
why did everyone need to support
Thank you,
the
thank you. But let me just try and make one single point, if I can,
compulsory.
please.
Anybody.
It's not that these concerns that Riley raises aren't important, or that women's safety isn't important. All of that is important. And what happened to Riley, it's an important story that we should listen to. Everyone should. And the left shouldn't be attacking me for that. That literally shouldn't happen. No one should be attacking anyone. We should listen with empathy.
Yes.
But I think the issue occurs when we look at abuse rates in America for women, right? It's 1 in 3 women that are abused by men in America. You haven't commented on that. You haven't commented on abortion. You haven't commented on so many things. Trump discussing that it's okay to grab a woman's pussy. You don't make comments on those issues. And those issues are affecting more women than a trans woman in a changing room, because there aren't that many. There's only 700,000 trans women in America.
So because
they can't
Riley-
all be abusing women. That would be insane. They're busy.
All right, I'll let Riley answer those.
There's a reason, but there's a reason why. There's a reason why for this, though. The truth of the matter is that, thank you. The truth of the matter is that there's always this conversation about the woke group, the far left group that's pushing an agenda, but we gotta be real about the people like her who's pushing a far right agenda that oftentimes is
It's not
fixated on
far right.
coming after people of color,
What are you
coming
talking
after
about,
queer
far
people,
right?
and also pushing an agenda that is
Ernest, when did
the same
Riley
way
mean
that
we
you
far
don't
right?
even know what woke means. You don't even know what woke means, right? It's just a rhetoric that
Can I
you
just ask you a question?
and that's fine,
Hold on, Ernest,
right?
can I ask you a question, just to clarify, because I'm none the wiser? Define far right. What's the definition of far right?
Far right are people that are pushing homophobic, transphobic views, misprescribing, misdefining terms such as woke. None of you all seem to really know what woke means, but you like to use it.
I'm gonna talk about it.
That's one
So
of
if you're gonna use
I didn't tell you what it was.
We disagree
I'm
with
gonna call you all far-right conservatives.
Wait, see, hang on.
No, it's the same thing with like anybody you don't agree with, you call woke. So if you're gonna call
You're
anyone you
the
don't
only
agree with
person
woke
that said
or
woke this
extreme or
entire
lefty,
time.
Yeah.
literally,
You
I'm
were
gonna
the
call
only
you
person that said woke.
I'm gonna call you
Let me
out.
say something.
It's supposed to.
You're saying that I'm a right homophobe. My response to that is saying that men can identify as women, and lesbians who don't want to date these men who identify as women. That is homophobic. You are using lesbians as your political pawn, and that's sick.
You just,
Lesbians don't want
why
this
do you just come
either.
out with that?
Right, so why are you calling
That
it a
wasn't anywhere.
political fine?
That wasn't
Why
why
are you calling it a
discussing where
political
that
fine?
came from.
Because he called me a homophobe, and I'm sitting here saying I'm fighting for
Well,
the
I
sex-based rights of lesbians,
We
of
get
women.
emotional about this, and we're right to.
Yeah,
because
push it
we're
along.
discussing our rights.
How do you conflate
Hang on,
how do
please
you
don't
conflate
talk over each other.
transphobia
Hang on,
with
hang on,
fighting for
Ernest,
women's
hang on.
rights?
Let's talk over each other, because otherwise you can't hear what's going on.
Yeah.
You see, James, it's interesting because you showed zero support for Wiley's
That's not
campaign.
actually what happened. I
No,
just
no,
showed some.
I'm talking about her campaign. You wanted to campaign about everything, but she's actually chosen the one that has directly impacted
No,
her
my
life.
question is,
Hang on.
why aren't you?
I haven't asked any
concerned about that
questions.
too? Well, let's ask Riley if she
I'm
is
about
concerned
to
about
She
that.
hasn't been hit by a man, James.
No, I'm going to come to that, but she's not here to talk about abuse of women. She's talking about the infringement on women's rights to fairness and equality in women's sport, which she herself has personally suffered from, right? Now, you have shown zero support for
That's
any
not
women
true.
like Riley Gaines.
It's not true. I just said it's an
You
important
literally
story.
said it's-
I literally said it's an important story. So I need to.
Last week, you
That's
said,
what I said.
last week,
Here, I literally just said 2 minutes ago. It's an
I may
important
say,
story.
I may remind you, I know a week is a long time in Jane Barr's memory lapse,
But
but
it was
last,
also a week.
la-
You've been on holiday.
last week, I had 3 days off. Last week, you said that the Olympics should be gender neutral.
Well, I still think it would solve a lot of problems.
It would solve zero
It
problems.
would solve so
And that
many
shows
problems.
us, and that, my point, and
I'm not a sports
Let me bring
commentator.
Riley.
I don't know sport.
Oh,
But I'm
come
telling
on,
you, I think you
James.
should listen to Riley's story. But my issue is not the story or the concern. My issue is that it's the only concern. And then when we drill it down,
It's literally
and we
her
say,
campaign.
what do you think about abortion rights in America? What do you think about what Trump said? You don't want to comment on
What do you think about the Uyghur Muslims in China?
Yeah, exactly. Maybe that's
And
not
what
true.
have you tweeted about the Uyghur Muslims? You haven't. So you're a bloody hypocrite. I
I'm
mean,
not a hypocrite by saying
Not everyone wants to do it.
I'm trying to explain why the left get upset. It's because we're looking at it. The only thing you're bringing up is
let me bring in Riley, let's try and get some order here. This is exactly what, Ernest, wait a moment,
The
please.
hypocrisy
Wait
is,
a moment, Ernest.
Yeah.
Riley, here's my point. You've just seen right there the hypocrisy. Right there, right?
I'm
Is
trying
that-
to explain.
When I say to James Bond, why are you talking about Uyghur Muslims oppression? More. Why
Why
should
you
I?
talk about Uyghur Muslims?
Why should I? I do. Why
Right.
should I? He doesn't, but he wants you to talk about all
No,
the
I
other issues.
am trying to explain why we get upset. We look at it and we go, why is J.K. Rowling only concerned about this one thing?
She's not only concerned about that. She
And
thinks
why-
about a lot of stuff. Let me bring in Riley. You've been very
I
patient.
think it's
Listen to this. Right.
entirely disingenuous to say that this is the only issue that I care about. I spend majority of my time advocating for this issue, but that's not to say that I don't speak on other issues. A big campaign of mine and what I'm advocating for now is women in prisons. Women who are most of the time victims of domestic assault, domestic abuse, to which your point, I will say any form of sexual violence, any form of domestic violence that women face is entirely wrong and should be denounced, and those who commit it should be criminalized. But a large push right now is for fighting for these women in prisons, incarcerated women. They still deserve sex-based protections and their rights too.
It always comes back to this one issue, which only affects, which affects less women than the major.
Does that make it
All right. Don't talk over each other. Ernest.
right, yes. The point I'm making is that that's exactly the point I was trying to make earlier, is that while she cares about other issues that are very important, and I agree with her on several of those issues, she's being platformed only when it comes to particular issues that are divisive, that are transphobic, that do not
I'm not transphobic, Ernest.
explore interest.
It's not
And so that's what it
transphobic
is.
to think
The
6
issue
foot
is
4
that
inch
we're having a
biological
conversation.
males
Why is
should
this
not be
conversation
competing
being
against
conflated with
women.
Pride Month? Why is this being conflated with Pride Month here? Why?
It's not been
Why is she here
conflated.
talking about, why is she in a conversation around Pride Month?
She wasn't. She's in a conversation about her book, which then led to a conversation
Well,
about Pride
no,
Month.
but she's talking, but she's also in
Because
a
Pride Month
conversation about
affects
Pride Month.
every
Why
single
is there a
person.
conflation there?
Pride Month affects
Oh, because
every single.
because it goes aligned with your far right agenda.
Why
That's
not?
why
Right?
we're bothered.
She's not far right.
That's the
She's
issue that we're
right.
talking about.
Ernest, let me ask you. Ernest, why do we have to have, I want to ask Ernest a question. Why do we have to have a month of
Go
Pride?
ahead.
Why?
Because the reason why is because it's people like you who don't understand why we really have it. It's not really about
No, no.
sexuality,
But
it's about
explain to me.
allowing people
Explain
who
to me.
are like myself, who don't feel like they're being represented or being protected in a world and society where people like Riley gets a platform to spew misinformation.
What's
And
the
so
misinformation?
Representation.
What's
is
the
important.
misinformation, Ernest?
The misinformation about gender.
Tell me
Like,
one
you're
thing
over
she
here acting
said.
like
Tell me
there's
one
this
thing she
issue
said
with
that's wrong.
Weaponizing transgender people.
Tell me
as
one
an
thing
attack
she
on women.
said, Ernest,
That
that's
is
wrong.
just the biggest,
Ernest,
and I just said that.
Ernest,
and I just
no,
said
no.
it.
I think
Say-
it's
I want you
right?
to correct one thing she said that was wrong.
Can you hear?
Yeah? Answer me.
So, transgender people's existence does not threaten the existence of women.
No one
Are you
no one
okay?
said that. Nobody said that.
But it is the vibe, though, isn't it? That is the vibe of this whole thing. It is,
No.
that's definitely
I'm
the
sorry.
vibe. I said that's the vibe of your
Ernest, nobody has ever
That's
said
the
that. No one said that.
It's the vibe.
I support trans rights,
After
defense, and
you
equality.
believe that though.
Well, you are,
After, no,
you
I'm
cannot
not
think of a
talking
single
years
thing.
after that.
Alright, I'm asking you one more time. Tell me one thing
After.
Riley Gaines has said, this far right lunatic who's lying about it. Tell me one thing she said that is actually factually untrue.
Like I said before, trying to position
You can't answer,
and
can you?
over-index transgender people in sports. I said it again. Over-indexing the role of transgender people in sports as if it poses a threat to cisgender women.
Cisgender.
That's BS.
Ernest, why are we seeing women infiltrate
Go ahead.
into men's sport?
Yeah, of course we're not. Because they can't compete. You don't see any
If
trans
there's-
men going into men's sport, do you? Because they can't, they lose.
And
Ernest,
I'm trying to figure out
I'm
what
pretty
you're
sure there are.
trying to say.
There aren't. There are no
Are
trans
you
men
trying to say
competing
that
at a high level
transgender
in
women
men's
are not
sport.
women?
It doesn't happen.
no,
That's ridiculous.
because women are not.
No, I don't hear
Trans
She
women are
does
men.
not believe that transgender women are women.
Because they're not.
And
They're not. For the love
That's
of
good.
God,
I
they're not.
think we should get
They are not.
And
They're
they
not.
are.
And please,
The transphobia
please
is
stop.
here.
Please stop
I
abusing
get it.
women by calling us cisgender. Women are just
women, so she got time
That
to
doesn't make
not
you
consider trans
I don't
women.
even have to have
Women,
You know what this
and
takes
she
you,
considers
Ernest?
abusing.
Ernest,
These are far,
Ernest.
these are far reach, these are
We
far
even
right
biological
talking.
reality
Ernest,
is
you
all
know what
right.
this?
Is
What
that
is my? Here's what
Hey,
is my.
Ernest, if
Hang
I'm
on,
a trans
hang on.
woman, you are a misogynist.
And you're
Exactly.
playing with pride, man.
Let's debate nonsense. The Ovarian Cancer UK.
So defending.
Hang on, Ernest, keep quiet for a moment. Ernest, please stop talking. I'm reading something.
I love you, Ernest.
The Ovarian Cancer UK tweets today. Did you know that anyone with ovaries, regardless of gender identity, can be at risk for ovarian cancer? Let's raise awareness by asking, can men get ovarian cancer? James Barr, men can't get ovarian cancer because men don't have ovaries. What is a leading cancer charity doing? It's asking the stupid question.
What are you doing attacking a charity?
Because I think that is attacking women.
Why are you attacking a
Well, I'll
charity?
tell you why, because a woman then actually messaged me who has terminal ovarian cancer, who says the idea of being on a tiny ward with somebody identifying as a woman next to her who actually has a penis and is a man, right, fills her with utter horror.
Because
which
of
raises
the
her last
and
few months
fear
of life.
mongering that this platform is
No,
creating.
she's a woman, doesn't want to be around men.
Listen to me.
When she's dying
Listen to me.
in an ovarian cancer.
If I decide to drink oat milk, that doesn't mean that actual milk is no longer is being threatened, okay? And in this case, this charity want to raise awareness about maybe 1% if that of people that could suffer from ovarian cancer.
So how many men, okay, let me ask you, how many men have ovaries?
I have no idea, Piers. I'm not in that
How many?
situation.
How many?
But they put it in their tweet. If you read it properly, it actually says
No men,
narcissistic are.
no
It
men,
does say.
no men have ovaries.
Well, according to
No
a
men,
charity that work in this field,
no
they do.
men
So
have
they should help the
ovaries,
charity.
no women have
Well,
penis.
according to the charity, who I think probably know more about ovaries than you do,
They
because
clearly
you are a
don't.
woman, Piers.
They
I
clearly
am.
don't.
Sorry, look, you know so much about women. Your wife took a 2-week break from you, so I don't know why I'm listening to you talking about women constantly. Can we just get back to the fact that they are trying to help someone?
No,
That's
I
all.
what did you say?
Then you have a sabbatical from each other.
It was actually a lot longer than 2 weeks. I recommend it warming us. I want one from you. Let me bring Riley back in. Riley, this is the trouble. When you ask specific questions, I stop shouting.
Everybody, the conversation is clear.
Yes, go on,
I gotta be quiet, but
Go on, Ernest.
in a nutshell, the larger point I'm making here is that the reason why I'm saying transphobia is because it's clear on this panel that a lot of you on this panel believe that there is only one type of woman, which is cisgender women, and anyone else does not prescribe to that definition for you all.
No,
And in
here's
my
what-
opinion,
no,
that
no.
is transphobic.
Here's what I
You
believe.
believe that
Let me
cisgender
answer
women
Ernest.
are women, and everyone
Okay,
else
are there different
is
types
not
of black
included in the
people?
conversation.
Or is black just black?
It's hard to,
That's because black is just black. Just like there's no such thing as cisgender and they're just women. You can embellish your titles with whatever you want, and walk down the street and
Let me ask you this, Ernest. Ernest, let me ask you this. Hang on, don't shut. Ernest, let me ask you this. If I now identify as a black man, am I a black man?
Why are you conflating race with gender?
I'm just asking you a question, Ernest.
That's intellectually dishonest.
If I
That's
identify,
intellectually dishonest.
maybe, it's a question you don't want to answer, isn't it? If self-identity is limitless,
Because if
I'm
race
now
is
a
not
black
the same
man
as
called
gender.
Ernest.
Because race is
Am
not
I?
the same as gender.
Am I a black man if I say I'm a black man?
Say it again.
Am I a black man
Listen,
if I say I'm a black
you
man?
can be,
Am I?
no, because
Okay.
you're a white man.
Thank
because
you.
it's race.
So you don't
Because race
respect
is
my
not the same as
rights
gender.
to identify as a black man, do you? You think it's ridiculous?
You can identify as a black man. You can identify as a black man, Pierce, but I know you lean on white privilege more than anything else.
Okay, but to be clear, you wouldn't respect my rights to identify as a... You don't respect my rights to identify as a black man. In fact, you think it's ridiculous, don't you, Ernest?
You could, Pierce, you could if you wanted to. And the reality is,
Would
that
you respect me,
a white man like you,
Would you
can
respect me?
identify as black,
Would you
and not-
respect
and not-
me
and not
and
be
refer to
harmed
me
in
as a
the
black
same way
man?
that a transgender person would?
Would you respect me and refer to me as a black man? Would you respect me and refer to me as a black man? Yes or no?
No.
Thank you, Ernest. Okay, let's move on to something else. This is
The point is,
no, Ernest, take a chance. Take a chance. Ernest, take a chance. Obviously, you wouldn't be saying because I'm not black.
You didn't even post a black square.
I'm not a black man. But you know what? Let's move on. let's move on to some other lunatics.
Black man, Pierce.
Let's move on
I
to,
wanna be black.
right, calm down, let's move on to Ali Baldwin.
I wanna be black here.
I want to move on to Ali Baldwin and one of the most grotesque promo videos, I think, from reality TV history.
Hi, I'm Mario and we have an announcement to make. No, definitely not. It's on having kids. This is about our show.
We're inviting you into our home to experience the ups and downs, the good, the bad, the wild, and the crazy. We're in the boat. We are in the boat.
No, we are not. No, that's it.
We're coming to TLC.
So I have two thoughts. We're going to be quick on this debate. I have two thoughts about this. So one is, I thought these two really were concerned about privacy.
Yeah.
And here they are now putting cameras onto their entire family 24/7 for a reality show. And secondly, he is about to take part in a criminal trial about the fact that he shot a gun at a woman who then died.
Yeah.
Olivia Hutchins. Every level is grotesque, isn't it?
Yes.
I don't know.
I can't think of anything worse than watching something about Alec Baldwin and his excessively fertile wife.
With the dodgy accent.
Oh my god! And the I can't even remember 19's name. But this just shows how in poor taste this man lives his life. To be going through a criminal trial and trying to open the doors to his I don't know Manchester United sized family life. It's just ridiculous.
Nine children, I think.
Oh my god.
I think Alec Baldwin maybe needs to shoot a few more
Sounds
blanks.
very familiar.
Oh my god.
Shooting blanks would have been a good idea.
Yeah.
Riley, what do you make of this?
No, I agree. Me watching that, I'm like, this is a guy who attacked the media relentlessly for invading his privacy. And now he's putting his family and his children on full display. And quite honestly, like Esther said, I can't imagine anyone would want to watch this. So I think, we ask ourselves, is this image repair? Is this a money grab? I don't know.
We're on the verge of something historic here, because if Ernest Owens can find it in himself to agree, we have a united panel. Ernest, Alec Baldwin.
I agree.
Happy Pride Month, everyone.
Ernest, I'm glad we finally found a point of agreement. Thank you to my panel. Wiley, congrats on the book. It's a great read. You remain one of my heroines. Keep fighting.
Right, blow up, by the way. You are looking.
Right?
Yeah.
Yes.
Well, everyone appears on the show.
Sorry.
The glow up. We love the
You
glow
want to
up.
glow up.
Everyone who appears on
Thank you.
Facebook,
Thank you.
everyone who appears on Uncensored is a natural glow up, with one exception. James Barr.
Why not glow up?
I don't know, mate. You tell me. It's a very de-glowed. So thank you all to my panel. And thank you, Riley. And good luck with it.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks very much.
Good to
Happy
see you.
Pride Month, Friday.
Oh, thank you. And you. As if you haven't been told enough.
Yeah? I think it should be all year round. Every day.
Oh gosh, forbid.
Every day I'm proud of James Barr.
Absolutely not.
Like straight.
No, I'll never leave my house.
Yeah, and then on a straight week. Can you imagine the hell that
I would love it. I need
if
a rest.
I actually organised straight week.
months of the year.
Straight week for middle-aged white guys like me. Can you imagine?
11 months of the week.
I think
You're
Ernest
you're
would explode. Anyway, thank you all very much. Good to do that.
Now, oof, I know how my body works. I could conquer any day.
Libs of TikTok, short for liberals, is one of the most popular and controversial accounts on social media. It highlights examples of LGBT excess posted publicly by libs, such as this recent post of a man in a dog's mask with a comment, "There's a serious mental health crisis in this country." Well, Rachel is the creator of Libs of TikTok. This weekend she sparred with Washington Post reporter Taylor Lorenz, who was mystifyingly wearing a mask outside. The encounter went viral and was variously described as unhinged, cringeworthy, and agonizing, with both parties being on the receiving end of all of those criticisms. Here's a taster of what she said.
I'm asking you, why is it that people have to live under your sort of view of gender? And
It's not an idea, it's science. It's facts, it's biology. There's nothing logical about chopping off kids' body parts. There's nothing logical about giving kids porn in school. The whole trend is it's based on a lie. You can't change your gender.
Personally, my feeling is that I believe in personal liberty. I grew up in a town where a lot of people for their middle school graduation, women got nose jobs. I was just wondering, out of all the books that you've sort of tried to remove, how many have you read?
I've read a couple of them.
Which ones?
Genderqueer. I've read This Book is Gay. My Shadow is Pink.
And what do you consider gay porn in these books?
This is a blowjob.
In the conservative movement, there's this ideology around sort of white nationalism, which is obviously kind of a hardline ideology. How do you feel about sort of aligning yourself with those people and accounts?
Not all cultures are equal.
But let's just get back to the Great Replacement stuff, because I'm curious, what are your thoughts on that whole ideology?
There were some months over the past 3 years that there were more illegals coming into our border than children being born. They're importing people who want to destroy America.
So is libs of TikTok really hateful, or just shining a legitimate light on woke insanity? In a moment, we'll discuss that and more with tonight's pack. Here in the studio, Censored contributors Esther Cracker and Ava Santina, and in New York Fox Nation Post and author of Enough Said, my friend Tyrus. But first, I'm joined by the libs of TikTok creator, Aya Roachik. Well, hi, thank you very much indeed for joining me on Uncensored. I've got to say, I read a lot of your tweets, and the ones that I absolutely love are where you expose rank hypocrisy, where you simply show people a statement by a liberal, normally about something to do with the right wing or conservative arm, and then you have a response which just highlights the hypocrisy.
Karen, thanks so much for having me on. It's great to be here. There's a lot of hypocrisy to expose, and it's part of the reason why they hate me so much, because I'm just sharing themselves in their own words and pointing out their hypocrisy, and they just can't handle seeing that.
Yeah, I mean, you've become a hate figure and a figure that's very popular as well. How do you deal with the reaction? And you've got an aggressive interview there with the Washington Post journalist. Do you care? Does it deter you?
No, not at all. The hate actually keeps me going because the people that hate me are the most vile people on earth, and the fact that they hate me tells me that I'm doing something great. I would actually be upset if the people who are pro-genital mutilation and pro-giving kids porn in school and pro-sexualizing kids, I would be kind of concerned if they liked me.
Right. I mean, many people will watch this and they'll agree with you. Do you think some of the ways you express yourself have crossed the line? Are there any of the tweets you've done where, with hindsight, you would have phrased things a little differently?
No, I stand by every single one of my tweets. I'm very proud of the work that I have done to expose the sexualization and grooming of children and to expose the hypocrisy of the left.
Okay, well, let's bring in the panel here to discuss this. Ava, it's a hugely popular account. It's various accounts, but it's hugely popular. What do you think of it?
I find it quite hateful, but I think that's the intent, right? Because people are addicted to receiving click gratification, and they like to be retweeted and they like to be liked online, and a really good way to go about that is to stoke fear and to stoke loathing. You know, that one video you just showed us, Sarah, of that person in a mask and they are like poring over a couple of slices of bread. Yeah, that's totally nuts, but does that person deserve to go viral and have their life destroyed? Probably not. It's very weird behaviour, but it's almost like capital punishment.
But there's a lot of people on the woke side who are also extremely hateful, and pricking their balloon actually could be a valuable public service, exposing the rank hypocrisy of much of the woke insanity in terms of the way they express themselves. I think is important.
But what have we actually exposed here? Have we not just exposed some people are quite strange? I mean, is there any actual humanitarian good from posting these people online?
Well, I think what happens is when you tend to be in a corner of social media, you don't even want to be there, but you're in an echo chamber. So actually, the algorithm doesn't allow you to see these things. The fact that this website or the libs of TikTok just repost things that are already posted by libs, I think it's quite telling. It's not fabricating things that don't exist. I do appreciate it may not be helpful to say someone who's clearly mentally unwell is mentally unwell for it to go viral and for them to be trolled on the internet. But I think the fundamental premise is it's not making stuff up. These are things that exist. This person arguably put it on social media. If he goes viral because another account retweets it, what's the
I kind of agree. I mean, it's bringing Tyrus. I mean, Tyrus, there is a lot of hypocrisy on all sides on social media. We know that.
Yeah.
But what do you make about the few?
I'm actually,
Sorry, go on.
I'm actually upset. I want to be made fun of by Libs of TikTok. I love you guys. I think you need to open up. I need to open up Libs. You need to come after conservatives also. There's a lot of dumb shit coming out of people's mouths, and I think the biggest thing is just hearing that argument. I watched the interview, and here's the thing: it's freedom of speech. Whether you like it or not in America, you're not gonna like everything. People go after you. I think what Libs is doing is they're just putting a mirror on you. Now, she was just writing the stuff and just doing what everyone else is doing, basically the parrot procedure. The woman that she's arguing with was basically saying, have you read your books? I'm willing to bet the woman that said that to her didn't, because she didn't give her any name. So I think what has to happen is, if you're in situations like that, I don't think any books should be burned. I do think, though, there should be, just like anything else, pack of cigarettes, America's got to be 18. If there's a book that has high sexual content or instruction or biography, it needs to be labeled and such. And if a child is curious or has those questions, that's a book that needs to be checked out with their family. So there needs to be access to those things, but we need to remember to be adults in the room. Anytime, like I said, if you would have said, if they would have said, hey, let's sit down and read this book together and actually figure out what's wrong. And that's boring, and it's a long thing, because in America especially, we're all parrots. We only want to read about 8 lines, if that, and then we take that and go argue with it. And we're seeing that on TV. We see everyone, like people like us, we come on, we read the headline, read a little paragraph. No one's actually, so you got to do the work. You got to go find the books, and then you can have a real conversation. We don't have real conversations anymore.
Yeah.
Parrots and repeat stuff. Whoever barks the loudest gets the most likes and tweets. So Libs is not doing anything that CNN doesn't do, every news media doesn't do. Look for a gotcha moment. Someone said something, they take out of context and place it. Here's the thing, the Libs aren't even doing that. They're just putting it. So keep doing what you do, but I'm sure if you watch it, you can make fun of me on something. Like my arms are crossed on TV.
Some of the tweets have had repercussions. You know, they've led to people being harassed, they've led to threats and so on. Do you have regret about some of the consequences, albeit they may not have been your intention?
Well, I don't think it's fair to say that my tweets led to harassment. The media, they like to accuse me of violence and bomb threats and stuff, and there's no evidence that it's my followers doing that. It's just, I mean, if I'm responsible for any of that, then the media is responsible for the death threats that I get after they report on me in a malicious way. So I don't think that that is accurate to say that.
And when you say, for example, that not all cultures are equal, what did you mean by that?
I mean, if you look at what's going on in the West, they're importing the third world, and there's constantly videos all over. It's very easy to find. And I think if you import the third world, you're going to become the third world, and it's scary. And I did explain it. You played the clip here. We're bringing in people who don't want to. Taylor used the term melting pot, but they don't want to join the melting pot. They don't like America. They don't like what we stand for.
Okay, you were saying that was disgraceful. Why?
Well, I'm just sort of confused, because I'm not really too sure what you're adding to America, or what you're actually contributing in comparison to this. This quote unquote importing third world. What are you talking about? People who migrate to America, or people who migrate to the UK, and then, I don't know, work in your health service and work for you. What are you actually contributing? Just because the color of your skin is white doesn't mean that you are somehow more valuable than someone else.
That's not what she's saying.
I mean, it is what she's saying.
Because it's not what she's
never
saying.
mentioned skin
And,
color.
You did. You said importing the third world, and we know what those connotations mean. Let's not play stupid here. We know exactly what you mean.
No. You are adding. I didn't get that.
You didn't. I put videos that are constantly all over
at
social
all.
media.
What videos?
The videos of the third
All
world
she does is
in the
repeat.
West totally destroying the city.
Oh.
Look at videos of England.
Let me bring Cyrus.
France.
Cyrus,
What's going on there? Are you okay?
Like, listen.
don't talk over each other. Cyrus, have your say.
Yeah, Tyra, here's the thing. This is what happened. So she got asked like 700 major questions. She and she tried to answer each one, and they're all gotcha questions. She said some cultures, listen, America, when the melting pot, you come to assimilate. This is where, if I could give you any advice, do not do these interviews because they're only designed to get you to ask you as many questions. It's like a rapid fire, boom, 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 and you're answering them as fastly as you can. That's the problem. Each one of those conversations you had was at least a 40-minute conversation on like my show out there. Like each one were long and diverse. There's no quick answer to them. You got to stop doing the quick answers when you're interviewed because now they're going to say you're racist because you're just being on the grouping. When you group, and that's what she was doing back to you. She's trying to group you in because by the color of your skin, because you're racist, because you're putting out stuff and you're asking a question. If people are coming to this country not to assimilate, to do whatever they want, and what we're seeing on our streets and what we're seeing in the streets of London, not a lot of assimilation. But there are good
your streets,
American, or there are good immigrants that come here, but you can't just say, oh well. Sometimes when you group it, you like to ease it, but you don't want to group her. You want to make her into this racist person.
But a lot of the violence that you see in America is perpetrated.
Any news group, you're taking what she's saying, you're turning it around to fit your narrative, and then you're throwing it back at her. Like, do some actual research on her. The woman's not racist at all. Okay.
A lot of the crime that you're talking about is perpetrated by American citizens.
Be better than that. You're better than that.
Right.
Get on her context. Get on her for what she says, but don't attack her skin. You're better than that.
I didn't attack her skin.
You're better. Leave her skin out.
I mean, it is. It's to capitalize on hate, fear, and loathing. That is it. And it's okay. You should.
Okay, let Ava
You
respond.
can ask me what's my intent of this account. My intent is not to stoke hate.
Okay, but what,
I mean, you can hear that at the beginning of this interview.
what is the, I mean, I suppose that you're going to say that the intent of your account is to shine light on things that actually just don't need to be shone light on at all. And as we saw from that interview that where you were exposed, you're not really, you know that you're not actually exposing anything. You're not actually presenting any new danger to anyone. You're just shouting sound bites and hoping that somehow they land and they go viral.
Kindergarten teachers teaching girls that they could be transgender, I shouldn't expose that?
Right. Is it really any of your business though? Is it really actually hurting you or hurting any Americans?
I'm sorry, I think this is quite unfair. At the end of the day, I do think that a lot of the things that have been exposed by Libs of TikTok are actually very violent, like what the kind of content children are consuming in schools, the kind of things they're exposed to, you know, questioning the justification of taking off people's limbs and different body parts, when you wouldn't do that for someone who's of rational mind. I think the problem that we tend to find is, when you're fighting on a side, you tend to effectively choose the path of least resistance and just say things that will connect, but you don't particularly articulate it. So I'm assuming when you say things like we're importing the third world, and I'm assuming this is what you're saying, you're talking about values. What kind of values are these people bringing into your country? Are they assimilating with the dominant culture? And I think these are valid points to make because over the last few years, we've seen millions of people cross the southern border. They haven't been audited. We don't know what values these people are bringing into the country. We don't even know who they are. These are valid points to make. And unfortunately, you don't get that opportunity to effectively articulate that properly when you're in doing short form interviews like this. So I think that's a perfectly valid point. But to say that she's not exposing anything that's important, these are the kinds of things that will actually sway the next election. So people are concerned about it, and you should be concerned about it.
I know that they are important. I know that people are talking about them, but it's because we ramp it up all the time. Look, I think your comment about the third world.
Not just because we ramp it up, it's because it matters. These are people who are
Alright, let Ava respond.
I think that we all know that comment about the third world is so unnuanced. It doesn't have any meaning to it, and we know that it's just baiting. It's race baiting, and it's stoking fear. I mean, you're welcome to tell me. Tell me what the other intended purpose of that, if it's not to do those things.
I think it's very important that we understand what could happen.
What could happen?
What could happen?
What do you mean by the third world? What exactly?
Why don't you ask Blake and Riley's parents? Why don't you speak to them?
I don't know who those people are. Okay, what do you mean when you say
You don't know Blake and Riley yet?
But what do you mean by third world? What does third world mean to you?
What do you mean by I shouldn't be exposing the sexualization of kids?
Why are you answering a question with a question? Can you not? I mean, why don't you give us a
Cyrus?
Hey, Pierce, I got a golf date with a panda on the moon. This is the problem. They're arguing talking points. There's no conversation here. She's not a racist. She made a valid point. America, we're having a lot of problems in the streets, and if you're being honest and stuff, if the people that are coming into the country in America, we're seeing a different trend. It's a lot of young men military age, in shape, not a lot of families, and young children. And we have a lot of problems with young men make bad decisions in this country. Men, men are dangerous. Doesn't matter what color they are. Men without jobs, frustrated, in the inner cities, bad things happen. And you can say that. It doesn't matter whether they're white, brown, black, there's problems. And to go at her back and forth, the original question, this is a joke. If you want to have an actual question, don't yell at her. If you want to meet her, then sit down and have a conversation. Lindsay TikTok is basically, she took the simplest thing in the world. What is she guilty of? Retweeting somebody else's narrative. And when you take it out of the water and you put it up on the board and we all look at it, we giggle and go, wow, that was really dumb. And then research it. She's not doing anything that any one of us was not already doing. The difference is, for whatever reason, when I retweet something like that is said that I think is silly or dumb, it did not blow up the way it is. So what she's doing is her formula. If you don't like her, don't like what she stands for, that's fine. But have a conversation with her. You want to call her a racist? I'm not going to talk to a racist. So why are we even talking? There's no point to this. Pierce, I love you. I'm sure if you want to move on to the next topic,
Yeah, we do.
listen to people argue and have her call names, a waste of my time and everybody here.
Okay, we're going to move on. I want to give the last word on this though to Hyatt before we let you go. You listened to a range of views here. What's your final thought about all this?
I think that the leftists can't handle seeing what they themselves are saying. Their views do not hold up to scrutiny, and that's why they hate me so much. I'm very proud of the work I've done. I'm going to continue doing it. And people ask me, what's your end goal? And I'll tell you right now, my goal is to become irrelevant. My goal is to shut down, because that will mean that gender ideology has been eradicated from this country, the extremely harmful and dangerous gender ideology, which leads kids to be mutilated and castrated, and the sexualization of kids is over. That's when I will know that my mission is complete, and I will shut down and move on.
Hi, Rachel. Thank you very much indeed for joining me. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Well, let's move on to another topic, as Tyrus suggested. Another pretty incendiary one, actually. This is about a transgender murderer called Scarlett Blake, who dissected a cat, placed his body in a blender just months before she then stalked a male victim and killed him in cold blood. Now, it was reported by many media sites this was a woman murderer, and that prompted J.K. Rowling, who's been very vocal about this whole transgender activism issue, to tweet, "I'm so sick of this bleep," she said to her 14 million followers on X. "This is not a woman. These are hashtag not our crimes." And as always, she got a barrel load of abuse back from the trans community. So let me start with you, Ava, on this. As a woman, do you not have a real problem with statistics now being artificially, and I would argue, as J.K. Rowling has, completely disingenuously affected against women? So the murder rate will look like more women are committing horrific murder crimes than historically they've been doing, because transgender killers now get categorized as women.
I find the argument confusing because I don't care if that murderer identified as a woman or is a woman. I care that she was a murderer. I mean, Rose West was a biologically born woman. I don't identify with that.
Who committed that murder?
Well, she said that she is a woman. I don't really think it doesn't do anything for me.
You're right.
I don't really
The literally will change the statistics.
I think it does matter. I think it does matter because it matters in how we view public policy and the way we craft public policy. We know that 70% of women in prison are in there for sexual offences, right, against biological women. And that matters. You're saying this person is just a statistic, but actually they paint a broader picture. This person is clearly a biological man who has committed a heinous crime, and in the name of women. That should offend me because it's actually a
That's what gets me is that Ava, you're all for women's rights. Right to the point. You don't care about you don't care about any of these issues.
Because the point is that this woman has said that she is a woman, and it doesn't have any bearing on the crime. It's sort of like, okay, so Shamima Begum, for example, okay, when she went off and she committed acts of terror, we decided that she wasn't going to be British anymore, and a lot of people were very upset about that, but she said, you can't change someone's citizenship, you can't change someone's nationality. That's something that and this is how I would say this is the same situation. Just because this person's done a heinous crime doesn't mean they're no
Alright, let me bring in, hang on, let me bring in Cyrus, who's been really patient on this. I mean, Cyrus, this plays into this whole issue of transgender.
It's the grouping. It's transgender, black, alien from Mars, doesn't matter. Murderer. Serial murderer. Whatever accoutrement or whatever nickname or pronoun this individual had is out the window once he took the life of the victim. The victim's nickname, the victim's name, the victim's culture should all be taught. Instead, because whether they're transgendered or not, and like I said, it's that grouping, it's so bad here in America, because with grouping you can get away with all kinds of stuff, and blanket stuff, and then take away from the actual issue. This individual does not represent trans people. He does not represent the gay
I
community.
take issue with that
He
because
represents
it matters.
himself. He chose, and whatever he wanted. I listened to you talk for it felt like a year. Give me my 30 seconds, and you guys can have a second. This individual is the only thing we should be focused on. We shouldn't know his name. We shouldn't know what he looks like. He should get no press. He can't be made into a martyr. And two, he shouldn't be bringing down the group that he claims that he doesn't represent the trans community. No one in the trans community wants to walk around killing people.
But I've noticed, Cyrus,
In my community, if I decide to kill Pierce for bringing me into this fight today, I'm not representing black community. I'm represented.
I understand that, but
who went after
but
Pierce.
interestingly,
I happy black, but I love you. And
thank you.
I
Well, don't kill me, because you actually could kill me with your bare hands. I'm actually being close enough.
But I'm just saying.
I
I'm
get it,
saying, if I right now lost my mind and did something, I'm not doing it on behalf of black America.
No, I understand that, but you would go down.
Tattoos.
No,
I'm
but
doing
okay.
it, the tires did it.
Let me respond then.
That's the bitch. Leave the other stuff out. Let's have a real conversation about the individual.
No, I get that, but
You
okay,
don't represent anybody.
let me respond to that. So here's where I think there's a slight flaw in that argument, which is you say, okay, if you commit a murder, it's all about your skin color or whatever. But if you go down in statistics that a black man had committed a murder, right? So say, for example,
Yes, it should be the statistics. Statistics are not open to feelings. Feelings are pretty lies and
but this is okay. This is the time.
The facts of the statistics is a man killed it.
But this
So
is the
then
whole point.
women wouldn't be.
This is the
I
whole
agree
point.
with you. I'm with you.
Yeah, but see,
I'm with you. He should be.
you've called this person
If he's
repeatedly.
sitting down and he still has a penis, Morgan, then he needs to go down as a man. He's a
Right.
biological man. In the stats, it's about biology.
And
not feelings.
that is
It's not
J.K.
accurate.
Rowling's. That's J.K. Rowling's argument.
No, she doesn't have an argument. She's making a factual statement, and she's getting yelled at for it.
Right.
Not an argument. She's not breaking the mold here. She didn't drop something. This isn't Harry Potter, some new magic spell she dropped on us. We all know this. We're all adults in the room. We know what a man is and knows what it looks like. We know what a woman is and looks like. It's just these stupid narratives and trying to fall into whatever side you want to fall.
But should it
We
go
know what
down,
it looks like.
Cyrus,
It's
Cyrus, the key point though is, should it go down as a crime statistic that a woman committed this heinous crime?
No.
Or a man?
The statistics should say his height, weight, gender, and the time of murder. That's it. Who cares about who he was as a person? He's lost that right once he took someone else's life. All we care about is making sure that justice is served, that he gets put away for whatever they do, whatever you guys do over there. I don't think you guys do it definitely anymore, so whatever's over there. But with the stats, no name, just the facts, Jack. And he was born, they checked him for male on his birth certificate. That's what you are. His feelings is irrelevant.
Okay.
In my opinion.
All right. It's an interesting debate, and I actually agree with that. I agree with J.K. Rowling. If I was a woman, I'm not declaring myself as a woman today. Maybe tomorrow I will feel like one. And according to over 17, I can just feel like one and be one. I think that is it is what you said actually. So this person decides they're a woman, that's it.
I just think it's correct to say that once you have taken someone else's life, you lose all rights to your personhood, and you shouldn't be made a martyr. And I think by having this conversation, having this debate, and J.K. Rowling blowing it up the way that she did, I think that we've actually been focusing on it and hemmed in on it, and you have made a martyr out of this person now.
Not at all. No, the martyrdom was done when they said
No,
this
because
person.
imagine if you're the sort of person that loves the limelight, loves being in the spotlight, this is exactly what you wanted. They're probably in prison
I
over
think most people taking
Well,
more
they're actually, this person is in a male prison,
Yeah.
as it turned out.
I just said in prison.
So it goes down as a woman murderer who's now languishing in a male prison,
Okay.
which to me exposes the absurdity of the whole thing. Anyway, we'll move on. We'll play a clip. This is about Mary Poppins, of course, has now been deemed racist. Let's take a look.
Shop at Europe's largest iPhone refurbishment and get 3 returns and a 12-month warranties.
So, this is about the word Hottentots, which in South Africa has been deemed a prescribed word which can no longer be used. Colonizers of South Africa used the term to refer to the indigenous Koki people and is now considered derogatory. And in their ruling, the people who reclassified it as a PG movie rather than a U, so they have parental guidance about whether kids can watch it. So we understand from our racism and discrimination research and recent classification guidelines that a key concern for people, parents in particular, is the potential to expose children to discriminatory language or behaviour which they may find distressing or repeat without realising the potential offence. So let's bring in Taurus on this. There are lots of these movies going back, in the last 80 years, which will contain words which by today's definition would be deemed offensive. Should we be recategorizing everything over a movie like Mary Poppins?
No, I think we're just brittle. I think we're softer than a hard-boiled egg. Yeah, of course, Mary Poppins is racist. I remember watching it as a child and going, my gosh, spoonful of sugar for breakfast. Listen, this is as stupid as it gets. The movie was made in a time period, and I guess nobody has parents anymore, or an uncle or a grand. And if they were singing it and they said it, like, hey, what's that word? Because guess what? American movies got some bad words in it, and sometimes, as best as a parent can do, they're gonna say something, they're gonna ask you a question. And this is the part as an adult, you say, oh, that was a bad word that was used, and we don't use that word anymore. So we don't say that. So if you hear someone saying that, let daddy know right away and we'll deal with it. That's how we used to deal with things. Now, we got to let Mary Poppins is racist. Did she also have a swastika? Is that why the umbrella flew? I mean, it's stupid. Like, we are so safe, apparently, that we have time to go back and pick on Mary Poppins. You want to pick on Mary Poppins? Pick on the sequel. How dare you? Even though Angela Lansbury was in there at the end, the real star was not there. And so, therefore, boo. Let's talk about that.
Okay.
We have so much time in our hands, and we're so safe. We can make Mary Poppins. Down with Poppins.
The song N-Words in Paris by Jay-Z and Kanye West went platinum. It was one of the most successful songs that year. And for some reason, it doesn't have trigger warnings. You can sing the N-word with impunity. There is no American rapper today that doesn't use the N-word. And I don't see people clutching their pearls. I don't see, etc. But I don't see trigger warnings on all these rappers that use clearly racially derogatory language. But for some reason, they can go back and comb through the archives of history and find the racist things in Mary Poppins, which was appropriate for its time. This is what people.
Well, it reminds me of when John Legend took it upon himself to rewrite the lyrics to Baby It's Cold Outside, because clearly it wasn't the innocent, flirtatious thing we thought it was, the video from the movie. It was actually a clear sexual assault. And so he rewrote all the lyrics. He's never rewritten any lyrics that any of his rap friends who write about the most appalling misogyny. Right? So there's a rank hypocrisy there. But on Mary Poppins, does anyone even know what Hottentots is? Does anybody ever ask? I didn't know about this scandal until I read having to reclassify. I'm like, why?
I hadn't heard about it before either, but I would actually like to pick
I
up on
was
something
still
that
afraid that the only job I could get was cleaning chimneys, so I didn't get my grades up.
I just, Tyrus, I'm a little bit confused because a couple of moments ago we were talking about gender ideology, and you were talking about the books that TikTok wanted to ban and wanted to have. You said you don't want to ban them, but you'd like to see sort of warnings on them about explicit content. I'm just wondering, why would you want explicit content warnings on those sorts of books? But then when it comes to this, you're saying that everyone is too soft and it should be parents in the room who should just tell you not to feel the way that you do.
If there's explicit warnings on it, because if there's explicit warning on the books at the library, then the children would need parent permission to check them out. So instead of just, or a teacher, or guess what? There's not always good people in the schools or an adult to be giving those types of books to children. So if you're gonna have a book in a child's presence or unsupervised children are in the library, it'd be nice to the library for adult content books or sexual
Now, is that
stuff,
not the
just like
argument that
the
they're
rap
making about
albums
Mary
all have the
Poppins?
same thing. So Mary Poppins wasn't talking about getting it on with the old man in the bathtub for the sex scene.
I don't think that there are any
But
children's
guess
books
what?
that are
Guess
specific.
what? We would have changed it.
Oh, but there are,
So the
Ava.
chimney thing would have been something different. So this is what you do. And like I said earlier, I don't know you, you know you better. You're trying to bring, you can't make the argument. So you try to bring in something else like, gotcha. Yeah, life is different. I don't
It
care
must be
about
very frustrating to have your argument
hiding
pulled
from.
apart.
It was fun. It was a musical movie. It's different than somebody's life story.
But just to
And
be
if I
clear
don't want my
here, so you would
children
like trigger
watching that
warnings
stuff,
on gender
parents aren't
ideology,
present
you
in
don't
school.
want trigger
If
warnings
parents
on
could be
anything
at school,
else.
it wouldn't be an issue.
Right.
Parents aren't at school to see what books their children are getting.
I think
So
your argument's
having
fallen
one
apart, sir.
section or a letter sent home to parents saying, we're gonna be having this book talking about this stuff, are you okay with that? The movies, you usually watch with your family. So there's two different subjects, but I guess you're running out of time.
Okay.
You know what? I think
Please,
there's
I'm
a
bringing something else. Tell me, maybe I could be a toxic, masculine, alpha male.
Well, I didn't say anything like that about you. You asked for a real conversation, and then I offer you a real conversation, and you just talk over me. So, I mean,
I want
what's the
books on
point?
World War II with death pictures in it. I want boxing pictures with blood in it to let the parents know what their kids are reading. God forbid.
This actually reminds me.
that we need to know what our kids are reading.
This debate reminds me of Julie Andrews and Dick Van Dyke bickering on Mary Poppins. I actually really like this dynamic.
There's only one Mary Poppins and it's Julie Andrews. Just putting that out there.
This is a supercalifragilisticexpialidocious debate, and I'm loving the dynamic.
Yes, it's a great way to
I think we have to repeat this.
Anytime.
Thank you. Listen, it's been great to have you, Charles, as always. Thank you, Ava. Thank you, Esther. Interesting debate today.
Thanks for having me on.
I enjoyed it. Thank you.
Virgin Media's Play magazine is out now. Get exclusive access to amazing interviews, fresh podcasts, the best in gaming. Enjoy all of this and more at virginmedia.ie/play.
Well, there's been an extraordinary global reaction to my interview with Fiona Harvey, the real Martha from Baby Reindeer. More than 10 million people have so far watched the full interview on our YouTube channel. More than 30 million more have seen it on our other social media platforms. Many seem to have enjoyed it, and inevitably many did not. The backlash is centered on whether I was right to give Fiona Harvey her right of reply at all, and to the assertions made in our panel that Netflix could have a serious legal challenge on its hands for making it so easily identifiable, and claiming emphatically it was a true story. So you've seen the interview, you've seen my verdict, we've had one debate about it, and now we debate the fallout. To discuss, I'm joined by the social commentator Imran Aiton, defence barrister Crystal KC, and stateside officer Tatum from the Officer Tatum YouTube channel, and Popcorn Planet's Andy Signal. Well, welcome to all four of you. All right, Imran, I saw you on another show I used to grace. Good morning, Bryn.
All right,
And here's what I thought. I thought you raised a good point, okay? And that's why I wanted to get you on today, get your background on censored, because the point you made was you felt that there were ethical concerns about having her at all on a platform as big as this one globally. So explain to me why.
Okay, so I think you went wrong in regards to a moral perspective. And this is where I think the conundrum lies in this kind of issue in terms of understanding what is actually happening with this dynamic. So we've got two things. I basically think at the heart of this conversation, thank you, at the heart of this conversation is a moral perspective versus a capitalistic perspective. So I'll just break it down. Just so you know, those two things can be true, work together at the same time, but they often clash. So for you, in regards to a moral perspective, you are completely and utterly wrong here. The reason why is because you decided to exploit a situation in a way that is deemed to be unfair and underhand. Why? Because with all of your expertise, with all of your intelligence, you decided you was going to, I'm talking to you right now, but I'll let everyone know, you decided you was going to capitalize off of the situation in a way that isn't okay. The reason why is because he knew with his expertise that he was, I don't know, or she was rather, potentially a compulsive liar, that's the truth, potentially mentally unstable and unwell. And in spite of knowing that, with all of your expertise, you decided to continue the interview. And this is why you morally went wrong. But I will be fair, because I'm a centrist. I'm not left, nor am I right, I'm a centrist. From a capitalistic perspective, that's what we're talking about, morals versus capitalistic perspective. From a capitalistic perspective, Piers, I believe you were excellent, fantastic. This is why it's annoying, because he does really well. He saw an opportunity, he utilised it, and he decided to lead the way and blew every single person out of the water. So in terms of a capitalistic perspective, he was right. He was accurate.
Okay.
So you are right, you are wrong, both things can be true at the same time, and therein lies the conundrum, and this is the conversation we are here to have.
Well, that's exactly the conversation we're going to have. So here's my response. Before I go to Crystal next, my response would be this. Obviously, we gave it a lot of thought before we interviewed Gemma Harvey, because I, like many millions of people around the world, and watched the Netflix series. And it's a very harrowing series, very funny in parts, it's shocking, it's moving, it's all of those things. It's very honest. If you believe that Netflix, when they say this is a true story, are telling the truth. But the real issue came that once Gemma Harvey's identity became known very, very quickly, thanks to internet sleuths, and it wasn't difficult. They chose an actress who looked like her, and they made her sound like her. They revealed it was a North London pub that she'd been in, and then they revealed all the choice of messages, which could be easily tracked back to her own social media. So this took about 10 seconds for the sleuths to work it out. Once her identity was out there and she was being written about in the papers, she was furious at what she saw as an unwarranted invasion of her privacy, because no one on Netflix or Richard Gadd, of course the writer and the star of the series, had bothered to run this past her or check if it was okay that they did this to her. No duty of care, she felt, by Netflix or Richard Gadd or Clark Wilmore Films, because she was so easily identified, so they claimed to be protecting identities of those in the show they depicted clearly wasn't true, and clearly was useless and ineffective. The third thing is she felt very seriously that she was being exploited for massive financial gain, that people were making a lot of money out of this story, and the story was not, as they claimed, the true story, but was a false and irresponsible mischaracterization of the truth. Now, I don't know where the truth lies.
No, you do know. You do know.
Hang on.
Don't ever say that.
Hang on.
Don't ever say that in your life.
Imam, I don't know. Well,
You do
okay,
know.
don't interrupt. I don't. Okay, but you haven't let me finish.
Okay.
You don't know because absolutely no journalist in the world has yet been able to establish that this lady, Gemma Harvey,
Actually, not good enough.
has a criminal
That's
record.
not good enough, go on.
Can you stop interrupting?
I'm going to interrupt. You
Okay, it's a bit pointless because
No, let's continue.
Okay.
Continue. You got this. You got it.
Nobody, including you, has produced any evidence that she's even been in a courtroom or charged with any offence or been convicted, let alone, as the Netflix show shows, her confessing to a crime which led to an 8-month prison sentence. And that, if it's not true, to me, massively discredits the Netflix series and massively contradicts their claim it's a true story. So we bring in Crystal Case here, King's Counsel, so a top lawyer. Chris, I know that you've spoken today to Fiona Harvey. Having spoken to her, having watched my interview with her, having been aware of the global noise around the series, obviously, what is your view about the legal issues involved here?
Well, I think I agree with your analysis a few moments ago. If this show had been presented as a work of fiction or semi-fiction, and if that had been made crystal clear as a disclaimer at the beginning of the show and at the end credits, I think people would kind of understand that there is artistic license in that process. But I looked myself today at the Netflix press release for the show, and I think it described it as a true story at least 5 times.
Yeah.
And in fact, at one point, it describes the the source material for the show as being, quote, real life. So throughout Netflix's marketing of this show, And in the presentation of the show online on the Netflix platform, it's presented as being true. There's no caveat to that. And the problem with presenting something as truth when it is untrue, and would be knowingly untrue to Mr. Gadd, the creator of the program and of the script, the problem with that is that if the person involved is readily identifiable, as here, as Fiona Harvey clearly is, then that person has a legitimate grievance. And I've spoken to her today, as you say, and she rightly feels extremely aggrieved at what's happened to her and her reputation.
And to be clear, I think there were a number of times, personally, in my interview with her, where I didn't think she was telling me the truth, and where what she was saying stretched the boundaries of credibility. However, I do think it's really significant that Netflix had this big denouement scene in the final episode, and I can show a little bit of this. We actually showed Fiona, the real Fiona, watching Martha, who is based on her, and this scene from the final episode. Let's take a look. There's one key point in the drama that has Martha's character pleading guilty to intimidating Richard Gadd in court and sentenced to 9 months prison time. Let's watch.
You are charged with the stalking of Mr. Donald Dunn between the dates of the 14th of August 2015 and the 22nd of March 2017. Are you guilty or not guilty?
Guilty.
You are charged with the harassment of Gerald Dunn and Eleanor Dunn between the dates of the 6th of June 2016 and the 22nd of March 2017. Are you guilty or not guilty?
Now, again, there is obviously a resemblance between.
You think so? That's very flattering.
I don't mean to value you or not value you. I just think there is a resemblance. Having met you, and you both speak Scottish people. But the fundamental point of this is: did you take part in that? Did you go to jail? Did you have a trial?
Of course not. Of course not.
Have you ever been to prison?
No.
Have you ever been charged with a criminal offence?
No.
Never.
No.
Nothing.
Nothing.
So that scene is completely.
That's completely false.
Who was giving me the deepest understanding of the quality of sleep that I'm getting?
Chris, from a legal perspective, I would have thought it's not difficult to establish whether she has a criminal record. There are ways of doing this, aren't there?
Yeah, there's the disclosure and barring service, and which issues certificates, criminal records checks, as they're more commonly known, and anyone can apply for their own disclosure and barring service certificate, and that will reflect whether someone's been convicted in court. And of course, there are court records. If it's suggested that this is a true element of the story and that she did appear in a criminal court, was convicted and was sentenced, that's a matter of public record, and whichever court that happened at would be able to release that information to the press. So it's either true or it's untrue. And therein, I think, lies the problem for Netflix and the creators of this program, because I have yet to hear, by way of defence, that there is a court record showing that Fiona Harvey pleaded guilty to a crime and was sent to prison. And you would have thought they'd be shouting from the rooftops if any such record existed.
Yeah, I think we would have it by now, no question.
Sorry, can I interrupt? I'm sorry, I'm really annoyed.
Yeah.
Chris, you know better, you're a lawyer. Oh, sorry, am I correct in saying you're a lawyer?
It's a KC, it's a King's Counsel.
Okay, perfect, right. So
Extremely senior.
Right, if you did your homework, you would have realised that Richard Gadd made it very clear that Netflix fictionalised the story. Let me
No, they
repeat.
didn't.
Yes, they did. They said it. They made it very clear. And yet you're saying
No, you're wrong. No, I mean, the Netflix series says this is a true story. And in fact, further than that, hang on, let me finish. Further to that, last week, a senior Netflix executive appeared in Parliament and under oath stated the following.
Okay, go ahead.
An extraordinary story. And it is obviously a true story of the horrific abuse that the right-hand protagonist Richard Gadd suffered at the hands of a convicted stalker. We did take every reasonable precaution in disguising the real-life identities of the people involved in that story.
So just to repeat, there is no evidence she's a convicted stalker,
Names right.
which means it's not a true story if that is the case. And they clearly did not do their duty of care to protect her identity
No, lie.
because she was identified within seconds.
Lie.
What do you mean lie?
Names right. It's your show, Names right. I'll just say it really quickly. Richard Gadd and Netflix made it very clear that this is a fictionalized
So you can't say it's true.
Don't interrupt. You see, you want to get Aggie. You're getting Aggie.
No, you're not.
You're interrupting me.
You haven't listened to what I'm just saying.
No, so stop and listen to what I'm saying. Richard Gadd and Netflix made it very clear that this is a fictionalized story. Richard Gadd also made it clear on This Morning and many other, in fact, it was just this morning and a few articles that I read, that he was trying to make it clear that he wanted to express a story that was based off of nuance in regards to the human experience, and it was fictionalized for Netflix, as in they needed a bit more entertaining and salacious. Your style.
Imam, with respect, that is simply not true. I literally just played you a clip of a Netflix.
And I'm giving you the nuance and giving you both.
There's no nuance. It's either fictionalized or it's not.
No, there's always nuance. Don't ever play that game. There's always nuance, and you know this.
There's no
You're an intelligent man.
Let me.
You know there is always nuance in life.
Okay.
Don't say that
Okay.
in your life.
Let me go to Chris Law again. I mean, you can be into nuance as much as you like, but when you have an executive saying, you let Chris respond, please. When you have somebody under oath in Parliament saying what he just said, I mean, that seems to me prima facie they are saying it is a true story and she was a convicted stalker and they protect her identity. None of that seems at the moment to be true.
If I can come in, Piers, it's not true. I'm looking at the press release. I told you this is a press release from the 15th of April when the show was first launched. And this is Netflix's own press release. And what it says is, while this type of storyline might seem familiar, it's important to remember that this isn't just a story, it's true. And they say it's true without any caveat, without any reference to it being in some way partly true or nuanced. No, it says that repeatedly. It repeats itself. It says here, can I just quote this for a moment? Well, there's no point. If your contributor is just going to interrupt, we're not going to get anywhere.
You're right. You're right, Chris.
Then speak.
There is a massive headline in the press release. Is Baby Reindeer a true story? And the quote is, "It's true," says Richard Gadd.
Yeah.
Without any, it's true on an emotional, nuanced level, and maybe not entirely accurately true. I can tell you now, the only reason why Richard Gadd and Netflix have been coming out with all this rubbish in the last few days is because they are defending themselves against an almost inevitable libel claim.
No, that's what I feel. Let's bring in the two other guests. We're watching, listening patiently. Officer Tatum, you've been all over this Baby Reindeer. What do you make of it? I mean, it's an extraordinary story. It's gripping the world. I mean, the numbers we've been getting for the interview, for the debates, everything about it are almost unprecedented. What do you make of this? What does it say about us? And do you believe Fiona Harper?
Well, I'll say this, the reason why the story is so compelling is because it's supposed to be a true story. I mean, me and my wife watched the docu-series, and we were blown away that this really happened. I mean, it was, implemented or at least stated that this woman was absolutely insane and out of her mind. How could you send thousands of emails and messages she couldn't spell? She was kind of dumb. She lied about her story. She was an incredible stalker. I mean, I felt, some type of way, and I didn't even experience it. And the only reason that anyone could feel that way is because it said at the very beginning of the documentary that this is a true story.
Yeah.
And so I watched your interview, and it had millions of views. And the reason why it had millions of views is because the implication of this young lady. And she actually comes on and does an interview with you. And my basic point is this: when it comes to her interview, she made a lot of claims in your interview that if any of those claims are true, that this is a huge problem for Netflix, because she said things that can be readily provable, and if Netflix did not approve any of these things, they're in a huge amount of trouble.
Yeah.
She said she's never been to jail. She said she had never bashed anything at the parlor there at the bar. She claimed that she had never assaulted him, raped him, or whatever they want to call it. She claimed that she had never done any of those things. And if she's done none of those things, this documentary should have never been made, or they should have clarified.
One
that
extreme
this
to
is
the
not-
next, with all due respect, and I know I keep interrupting, but I'm gonna do it anyway. With one extreme to the next, I already said this, and I hear you, and I appreciate you, because I've seen you, and you took a lot of sense, so I'm gonna be respectful, okay? And a lot of nonsense, right balance. So, they already made it clear that it was fictionalized, which I said earlier, but you know what you're all saying, wait, what
It's
you're
not
all saying,
true.
wait.
It's not true.
Wait, can I finish?
You
please?
keep
What
saying
I'm
it.
You're the only person that's saying this. You're the only person on planet Earth that's saying that it's fictionalized.
Gentlemen, allow me to finish.
You can't just
You
keep
should
saying
have
it.
worked with everybody.
So, fictionalized.
Can you
What
let
you
us
want,
talk?
gentlemen, is the caption at the beginning, a true story, but was fictionalized. So you want a true story. You want the
Yeah.
full sentence. You want the full sentence.
This
True
docu-series,
story, but fictionalized.
this docu-series is pointless if it's not
And then you
true.
don't want to hear that and cross it as
It could
untrue.
just
That's a lie because you are an
would
extremist.
not
You
have
are
gotten
an extremist.
any
I'm a
exposure.
centrist.
All right.
I get down to the nuance.
Let me, all right, let me,
Which again was trying to do with this
all right,
story.
story.
let me bring in Andy here. Andy, look, it's not true that they said it was fictionalized.
Lies.
You can call it lies. It's actually a lie to
No.
say that they said it was
No, you're
fictionalized.
actually being inaccurate, and you know this.
No.
And you know this.
All right, it's a pointless argument because you
Right,
clearly.
then don't say that, you know I'm gonna argue with you. So don't say
Okay,
that.
let me bring in Andy.
Start again.
Andy, from a pop culture point of view, your area of global expertise, how big a phenomenon is baby reindeer now, do you think?
Oh, it's massive. And I hear the argument she's making about you of, oh, should you have had her on? Of course you should have. And then she watched the interview too. We all watched the interview because we wanted to see if this person was real and if she had a case. And I think all this just comes down to the fact that, are those emails real? Did she really stalk and say these things? As Officer Tatum just said, she made a lot of claims on your show of things that aren't real. If those aren't real, she has an absolute case. I think Netflix had a real error when they didn't clean up some of the lines from the show. I mean, she was easy to find because you could look up, I need you to hang my curtain badly on Twitter, and it was literally to Richard Gadd. This is a massive error on Netflix side. So you can keep interrupting us and saying whatever you want, but there absolutely are fair legal debates here, and there absolutely.
Let him finish speaking.
No, I'm gonna say I agree. As a compliment, I agree.
I don't care. I want to talk.
I agree. No, I agree.
Let him speak,
I'm fine,
please.
sir. Please,
Please be quiet, Mark. Let him speak.
Shut up, kids. Go. I've got you, son. Let's go. You are.
Oh my God, how do you do this, Pierce? I was trying to say, I think Netflix isn't a problem. But if the honest, I don't think she was telling the truth. But if she is, and Netflix was hiding some of this, it's bad. But I want to add, sorry, I went distracted by interruption. I think it's important to say, look, morally, should you have her on? I've wrestled with that myself. She chose to come on. She chose, but wait, ma'am. She chose to put herself out there. She chose to keep her Facebook public. She chose to talk and do interviews. At the end of the day, I had a psychologist.
She's entitled to tell her story.
Yeah, I had a psychologist say, is this, does a person, someone, it seems like it's narcissistic personality disorder, potentially. I'm not a doctor. But as experts I've spoken to, that's where it is. And that doesn't mean you have a lack of awareness or that you're unable to know right from wrong.
Right.
So the question for me is, she is so mentally ill that we shouldn't be talking to her. If she's done the things she's done, yeah, we should be calling her out. Yes, we should be demanding accountability. And I think the funniest thing about all of this, the one part apparently that's not true about Netflix is her not taking accountability in court, which is not a good look for her. So I think if the emails and all of that are inaccurate, she absolutely has the case in my opinion because she was so easy to find. And I hope a judge, I'd love to see that case, and I encourage it.
I want to jump in real quick. Can I say something, please? I just want to say, Pierce, I thought it was an incredible opportunity. If the woman did not do any of the things that are in this viral documentary, she deserves a platform. And I think it was incredible. Let me finish. I think it was incredible because the people who have watched it have built an opinion. And she's either going to confirm that opinion or she's going to expose it as a lie. She deserves to have a platform and reach. I needed to watch that. Everybody who watched this docuseries needed to see, is this woman really crazy? And if she's not, if Pierce had not brought her on, she would not have a voice whatsoever. She cannot clear up any of these lies because this docuseries is so viral There's so many people talking about it. It's number one on Netflix. There has to be tens of millions of people who are watching this. And her character, her whole existence will be destroyed forever if all of these things that were put in this documentary were untrue.
Bring Chris back in. Chris.
Can I just say one sentence? Please indulge me. You can tell I'm ready to go. Yes, every single person on this planet has the right to apply, but not every single person is afforded the opportunity. And this is why, in regards to morality, his went wrong because he decided to platform someone. Just so you know, there are only 5% of stalkers in this country. I lied. It's more than one sentence. There's only 5% of stalkers in this country that are actually convicted. So Pierce decided, with his expertise, intelligence, platform, and provenance, he decided he was going to platform an accused stalker. 5% of stalkers are convicted. And there are 700,000 victims of stalkers in this country.
Baby,
Pierce decided to delve into Fiona. And this is why I'm aggy, this is why I'm animated, and this is why I keep interrupting with my black style.
Okay, let me bring
The docuseries exposed her. It wasn't hard to see. I mean, the actress should win an award.
Let's be clear.
How closely related
Let's
she
be
was to
clear.
the actual person.
Netflix put Fiona Harvey out onto the global platform by putting a character in their series which could only have been her, which is why she got recognised within 10 seconds when people referenced the messages that were put in the show. Can you please let me finish? No, I knew I was platforming a woman who wanted to have her say.
And also potentially a compulsive liar and
Yes.
potentially unstable and unwell, and you knew that with all of
Well, the good thing is, you are proving right now that I do platform people who might be unstable.
Yes.
So let's just be clear about that.
I'm subconscious.
Yeah.
So yes, you're right.
Let me bring.
I could be unstable, but I could also be very cautious, pragmatic, logical.
Okay, you can also let other people too. Let me bring Chris back in. Chris, like I said, you spoke to Fiona. As a result of that, will you be taking her case up?
I'm in discussions now with a law firm in London with a view to taking the case forward.
Pro bono situation?
I'm not going to discuss the terms of engagement. All I can tell you is this, Piers. I think that there's a degree to which the main point is being missed here. Netflix have chosen to make vast money, huge amounts of money, from promoting this program as being a true story. And they have done so without telling the public whether in fact, now that Fiona Harvey has challenged them on that key detail of her being a quote-unquote convicted stalker who was sent to prison repeatedly and multiple times sent to prison is the allegation made within the program. Before and after Richard Gadd, she was supposedly previously convicted and imprisoned and then pleaded guilty and imprisoned again, according to the program. Netflix have not come out and said one way or the other whether they are standing by that allegation that she's a convicted stalker with a criminal record who's been to prison or not. If it turns out, as a result of our inquiries into her criminal record background, that she has no criminal record, Netflix will have a legal case.
No, they said it was fictionalized. Chris,
Yeah.
you do better, you're a lawyer.
No, Chris,
It's not good enough. It's not good enough to just say
come on, show
fictional.
some respect to a King Jordan, please. Yeah, you're the one lying. You are the one lying.
Uncomfortable and annoying, but you know what? I will get the
It's
I don't
not
find
good
you
enough to
uncomfortable
say
and annoying.
fictional.
I just think you're lying.
You have said that to your guests because I've interrupted 3 of your lovely guests who
Right.
came on today and
Can you let? Well, you have to
It's like,
And
what's
you
the
should
point?
actually be ashamed
What
of your
happens
behavior.
Okay, Officer Tatum, let me come
You
to
end
you.
up having to correct.
Please stop talking and let Officer Tatum
Right,
talk.
you're going to get what you wish for.
Officer Tatum.
I'm surprised that she wasn't in that movie, that docuseries, because she's absolutely out of control. But let me just say it like this. I think it's incredible, and because you cannot say that it's fictionalized, you have to also act in good faith. You cannot say, well, I don't want to name anybody, but you have a character that probably did the best acting I've ever seen in my life, because as soon as you brought her on the show, I thought that was the person who was acting. This was the real woman who was being accused. That's how closely related the actor was to the actually accused. And so you can't just say in an interview one day, it was fictionalized. No, every sign and symptom and every creation of this documentary made it seem like it was real, all the way down to the characters. And it portrayed a lot of other people who could easily be exposed. There's a ton of people that worked with him, many people that knew him, many people would have known of her. It's not reasonable to think that they could not be discovered. I think it was incredibly sloppy for them to then throw out all of this information that can expose every single person that he was really referring to, and then say, well, I hope nobody searched. This is the top docuseries on Netflix. Yeah. This is huge. People are going to search. Why would anybody not? Everybody's curious. Did this woman really do this? She is one of the craziest women on planet Earth, if this in fact is true. And people are enthralled with the docuseries, which is kudos to them.
I totally agree. Let me bring Andy. Andy, I mean, where do we go from here, do you think, with this?
Well, I have a question for you. All the internet wants to know, and I'm sorry if I missed it, your answer is, has she stalked your producers who reached out? I feel like it's relevant. Other journalists interviewed have said it.
To be honest, she's had a couple of slightly intemperate messages, but nothing particularly out of the ordinary. But she's also today had a very good conversation with two of my producers and was in a pretty good place about it all. And look, I think anyone like Fiona Harvey who is suddenly propelled into the global public spotlight, albeit willingly when she came on this show, anyone who does that, you lose your anonymity in a flash. Because the reason she came on was that her anonymity had been shattered by what Netflix did. And as Chris Law rightly says, the key question, aside from the abject failure of duty of care, the key question is, if you say somebody is a self-confessed, by the way, because she was seen pleading guilty, if you're a self-confessed, convicted, multiple stalker, and it turns out none of that is actually true, I think it's a prima facie, open and shut legal case. Whatever Netflix said. I do know, by the way, that Netflix, in their private briefings to journalists so far, have produced zero evidence of any conviction. And yet Richard Gadd has been going around, and listen, I'm not against him. I think he's a very talented guy. He's had a massive success. He was at the BAFTA Awards last night, and good luck to him. I think he's a very talented guy. But something has gone wrong here, both in the duty of care process and in the legal process, because for a company as big and powerful and rich as Netflix, with all the infrastructure they have to avoid this kind of thing, for them to stamp on every episode at the start, this is a true story, when the culmination of that story may apparently be completely untrue and incredibly damaging to the person they make it about, then I think this becomes a big problem for them, as Chris has rightly said. So it'll be interesting to see how it goes. Yeah, sorry, Andy, yeah.
Incredibly frustrating. I was just saying, it's incredibly frustrating that she keeps talking about, well, no, they said it's fictionalized. Not everyone saw the follow-up.
Yeah.
Like, we can't have every audience member, all the 100 million people that watch Netflix, watch everything they produce. They're watching the show, and the show says it's a true story. That's what legally matters. And that's why I was asking you, because I'm curious. I think with the Daily Mail, someone said that she was being very aggressive and verbally mean and calling them names after the interview. You haven't experienced that.
We have not had that really at all. I mean, I think she's a volatile person. I personally believe she did send all those messages, because I do believe that Netflix and Richard Gadd must have evidential stuff about those. I also think she wrote him 106 handwritten letters, and she admitted sending one. You just compare the handwriting, there's probably proof there. But that's to be decided, frankly, by a lawsuit. And actually, even if she did send all those messages, that might indicate an unhealthy obsession with this guy, although he, by his own admission, both in interviews and in the series, has said that he was very screwed up at the time. He was taking a lot of drugs, had a very wild sex life, and so on. He may not be deemed to be the most reliable account of his own story, from his own memory. So all these things are to be established, I think, in a proper manner. But it just seems to me, Chris, I mean, there are two things here. Ultimately, one is the duty of care issue, which I don't think should be ignored at all, because I don't think a company like the BBC, for example, would have ever let this go through in the way that Netflix has allowed it to, for legal reasons. But secondly, ultimately, if you call someone a convicted stalker and they're not, that is a serious defamation. Even if it turns out you did send the messages. Am I right in thinking that really would be almost irrelevant to the central point?
Yeah, it's not necessarily irrelevant. Obviously, if you're looking at a libel action, there will be examination of what the person has and has not done. But I think here, I agree with you. The real surprise to me as a lawyer who often is involved in media projects of one kind or another and advising on whether something is potentially defamatory or not, is that no one ever appears to have reached out to her for any form of comment of any kind.
Yeah.
And most importantly of all, nobody puts at the very beginning of the show, this is based on a true story, but significant elements of it have been fictionalised and shouldn't be taken literally. And if that had been put at the beginning of the programme as a health warning, as it were, I think many fewer people would have watched it.
Yeah.
And Netflix can't have its cake and eat it. They can't be a network or a platform which bases its marketing on true crime and true docu-crime, and it all being true to life, which is spread across Netflix on almost half the programmes claim to be true stories.
I've had some of mine, I've had some of my own crime documentaries.
Well, exactly, but you can't have your cake and eat it. You cannot run documentaries which you claim, or dramas which you claim are true stories, when you know full well they are not true. If you do that as a broadcaster or as a streaming service, you very much risk legal action and you risk being the subject of very, very serious damages payments.
And by the way, I'm just going to say one more time before we finish this, that it could, of course, be the case that she does have a criminal record, and no one's uncovered it yet. I think that possibility is there. I didn't believe a lot of what she was telling me, and it may include that, but I find
Well, you would rather have expected Netflix.
I agree.
You would rather have expected Netflix to release that.
I will caveat with that, if you run the pressure Netflix have been under, you would make damn sure somebody saw it if you have that evidence, and they haven't done so far, which in itself may be very tame. I'm going to leave it there. Thank you all to my panel, very much indeed, or almost all of my panel. I appreciate the way that you've done it. Thank you very much indeed. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Master Reef, came for over roti igoni igladensu.
I'm extremely concerned that this woman might also be moving close to where I live.
You feel threatened by that?
I always felt threatened. I just never knew what she was capable of. She was rude to staff. She shouted at people. She was inappropriate with her meal. She threw a book across the office and hit somebody with it. She tried to follow a meal member of staff home. I was horrified. She just went completely crazy and started screaming at me. Very similar to the scene in episode 1 in which your dad showed. Every day I'd go into the office, the answer phone would be full of messages, all from her. I had grown adults in tears, terrified that she was going to harm them with all of this.
Do you have any doubt that she is a dangerous stalker? Well, Richard Gadd's character in Baby Reindeer goes looking for evidence about his stalker Martha, who quickly finds news reports with chilling echoes of his own experiences.
I sat there for hours taking it all in, piecing together her whole timeline. Her graduate job, how she got fired for inappropriate behaviour with the boss, how she started hanging around outside his house and falsely reporting to the police for abusing his disabled child. This other time she attacked his mother in the streets, a 4.5-year prison sentence.
As with Fiona Harvey herself, it didn't take long for the real identity of the person at the heart of that story to become widespread public knowledge. Her name is Laura Ray, and as the apparently fictional headline suggests, she is a lawyer who claims that Fiona Harvey stalked and harassed her and her family many years before she ever met Gag. I put those claims to Fiona Harvey during our interview. The Sun reported an interview with Laura Ray, who you've referenced, who accused you of inappropriate behaviour whilst you worked with her.
She headhunted me from another firm because she needed someone to do employment law, and I'm pretty good at employment law, so.
She said that she had to sack you days later because you were completely incapable of behaving yourself.
I walked, her staff were really, really rude to me.
She then said that following you leaving, obviously very quickly, that you then harassed her. Mrs. Ray said she was so frightened she issued workers at her firm with personal alarms. You were then served an interim interdict to stop you from contacting the lawyer or her politician husband.
That's nonsense.
An interim
Check this out. There is no interdicted sport.
Why? Well, I saw the interview, which is now being seen by nearly 14 million people on the Uncensored YouTube channel alone. Laura Ray contacted me and said she'd like her opportunity to respond. She joins me now in the studio. Laura, thank you very much for coming down from Scotland for this. I can only imagine that this is something that you hoped had disappeared from your life a long time ago, but because of the Netflix series and how incredibly successful it's been, one of the most watched series in living memory, it's brought it all back to your door, and your family, and what you say you went through at the hands of Fiona Harvey. So first of all, when did you know Netflix were doing a series?
Well, I found out about 5 weeks ago. The Mail and Sunday contacted me and asked me had I seen Baby Reindeer, and I had no idea what they were talking about. So they suggested I go and watch an episode of it, which I did, and then I spoke to them. And I couldn't believe it. From the very beginning, it was obvious it was the same woman, it was Fiona Harvey. You know, the actress does a very good job, sounds like her, looks like her, mimicked her to a T.
And uses the same phrases which they found on the real Fiona Harvey's Twitter account.
Yes, and I have a file full of papers which are letters from her, emails, faxes and so forth, and it's all identical.
And you yourself were identified very quickly from the series because there could only have been one Scottish lawyer who'd been through this experience with Fiona Harvey because it was all documented.
Well, I think it's because it was so unusual that she was a female stalker,
Right.
stalking another female. And so I was actually identified by the press before she was. I think the press sort of held back a bit with her for about a week, then I think it was the Sun who came out and said who she was.
This was the Sunday Mail, one of the top Scottish papers at the time. MP wife on the stalker, your husband Jimmy was an MP at the time.
Yeah.
And it was a front page splash story, so this wasn't a quiet, small thing. This was a massive news story in Scotland that people would have been aware of.
It was indeed, yes.
So when you realised that your story was being recounted, albeit with the names changed, in Baby Reindeer, how did it make you feel?
Well, I just couldn't believe it. I just couldn't believe what was going on. I just thought I was in a state of shock for about a week.
Really?
Yeah.
Had a really bad effect on you.
It had a very bad effect on me, even now after 5 weeks or so, when I'm getting over it a bit, it's still very triggering every time I see something. You know, I've never watched YouTube before, apart from when I saw your programme a few weeks ago. And yet every day there are more comments and people, psychiatrists and so on, going on, talking about the show, analysing your interview. And it just all triggers everything back to me every time I see it. It's very, very distressing.
Have you been emotional about it?
I have, yes.
You've been left to tears?
Well, yes. I mean, I'm a reasonably robust person. I'm an advocate. I peer report all the time, so I'm not easily prone to tears, but this has got me very, very anxious and upset. And particularly since a few weeks ago, I thought she was down in London, but a few weeks ago, we were told that in the little village near us called Buckline, which is where she's from originally, she's now been looking to buy a house, we've been told. Now, I don't know whether that's true, but apparently journalists were going round the doors of Buckline about 2 weeks ago asking about this. So I'm extremely concerned that this woman not only is abusing me on the internet, on her Facebook pages, and on every opportunity she can, defaming me, but she might also be moving close to where I live.
Do you feel threatened by that?
I do feel threatened. I always felt threatened by her, because I just never knew what she was capable of.
Let's go back to when you first encountered her. Obviously, she says that you headhunted her to be a specialist in the employment law at your firm at the time. Is that true?
No. She was looking for a traineeship. She had been looking for a traineeship for about 4 years and couldn't get anyone to take her on. Or at least, I think she'd been taken on twice before me, but for very brief periods of time. So you're supposed to get a traineeship within 2 years of getting your legal diploma. She must have got several extensions on that because she was way out of time. So I received quite a number of letters from her, and they were in such familiar terms that I thought this must be somebody I'd met somewhere, perhaps through the Labour Party. So then when I got engaged to Jimmy, she sent me a congratulations card. So I then got another letter from her saying, "Oh, I'm disappointed you haven't interviewed me for a traineeship." And I felt rather bad about that if this was somebody that I'd met and perhaps overlooked. So I invited her to come in and see me to talk to me. And I have to say, she was reasonably credible. I'm not daft, she didn't behave in the way she subsequently behaved during the interview. But I did have a few concerns about her. She went into a bit of detail with me about her family circumstances, which I won't repeat. But she made me feel very sorry for her, and I said, okay. She said, "I've never had anybody give me a chance. Would you please help me out here? But no money, etc." So I said, okay. And she only worked for me for 2 weeks.
Did you believe that she was qualified?
Oh no, I knew she wasn't qualified. She was looking for a traineeship. Trainees do menial jobs like, at the start, filing or, sitting in and things. You're training them, they're not doing anything then great enough for you. So you need to have a 2-year training.
But she said she had a law degree.
Yeah, but that's not enough.
No, it's not full legal training, but do you think that she even had the law degree?
I think she had the law degree because in my file of papers I do have a copy of something from the Law Society where it does state that she's got a law degree. So I believe she has a law degree, and I believe that some years later she got the diploma in law which she required to have in Scotland.
Do you think she ever practiced law?
No, I don't think so. I mean, she certainly, I don't think she ever got a traineeship in Scotland. She, I know for sure, worked with another firm after myself and was fired from there, and caused that firm a lot of grief.
You claimed in our interview that you didn't even know the name of your own firm.
Well, that's nonsense. I mean, my firm was called Eleanor Lawrence at the time I employed her. We subsequently amalgamated with a much larger firm called John and Miller, who took over ourselves in another trade union firm called McPhail's. So to keep the connection with the firms and to keep the goodwill, we called us the McPhail Lawrence Partnership in Glasgow, and then a few years later we were all subsumed into John and Miller.
Once she started working for you, what happened?
Well, I was out of the office quite a lot because we had an office in Glasgow and an office in Edinburgh. So she was put onto a desk where what she had to do was jot down details of anyone phoning in our accident hotline. This was the days before the internet. So we had a special phone number, a free phone number. Members of the public could phone if they wanted advice about an accident. So all she had to do was to write down the name and address of the people, take some basic details, and then get a solicitor to phone them. She wouldn't be capable of giving advice because she had no experience.
Right.
She'd never done it.
It was a clerk job.
Yeah, pretty much. It's a training solicitor, not quite a clerk, but when you're a very junior member of your staff.
I meant kind of office clerk, sort of relevant stuff.
Well, office clerks can often have a lot more experience in certain things. She was very much training solicitor really. So she was there to learn from us rather than the other way around.
And how did she do?
She was dreadful. I mean, I wasn't there all the time, but essentially she was rude to staff. She shouted at people. She was inappropriate with a male member of staff. She tried to follow a male member of staff home. I mean, all sorts of things happened. She threw a book across the office and hit somebody with it. But on the hotline, she was heard to be saying to people, "Oh, you don't want to come here. I'll give you the name of another firm of solicitors." So you're paying all this money for this premium rated hotline, and she was giving the details of our competitors to individuals.
And did you try and have it out with her?
Well, I did. I mean, the first thing that happened was on day one, she came into my cashier demanding that the cashier give her a sub. And her cashier Caroline said to her, "Sorry, but we don't do that. We need to wait till the end of the month." A couple of days later, she came into my office, burst through the door, very upset and kind of angry. And I said, "What is it?" And she said, "Well, there's a man downstairs who won't leave. I owe him money." And I thought, goodness, somebody's sitting in my reception, anybody else who's waiting there will think I owe this man money. So I said to her, "What's this all about?" And she said, "Well, I owe him for a car repair." And she said, "So I need a sub." And I said, "I'm disappointed you keep asking for subs because we've told you you're not going to So I said to her, I'll tell you what I'll do. I'll give you £250 out of my own personal money. Go and pay the man and then come up and talk to me. So she came up and talked to me. I said, keep the other £230 to keep yourself going. I said, she then started to tell me about various financial problems she had, which I won't go into. But I volunteered to go and speak to her bank to try and help her. And I was trying my level best to give this person a helping hand. And I went down, I spoke to her banker a week later, smoothed everything out for her. And when I came back to the office, she started saying to me, I've been on the phone all afternoon for the Law Society to find out what will happen if I go bankrupt. I said, Fiona, if you want to be a solicitor or ever be in a partnership, that's not the way to do it. So anyway, I made a suggestion to her that she might want to sell the car that she had, which had been the cause of the breakdown. And at that, she just went completely crazy and started screaming at me. Very similar to the scene in episode 1 of Richard Gann's show.
What was she screaming?
Don't you speak to me like that. And she did the same thing with a couple of other members of staff. One of my conveyancing staff was trying to show her how to do some kind of clause in a conveyance. And she started shouting the same thing, don't you say that to me, don't speak to me like that, but in a very loud and aggressive tone. So it became quite obvious quite quickly that she really wasn't cut out for this kind of thing. She, I think one of the other things she did was she phoned up a disabled solicitor that we used to do Edinburgh agency work for, and she phoned him up and said to him, oh, I just want you to know that all the people here in this office, nobody likes you, everybody says nasty things about you and makes comments about you. Now,
What was his disability?
he was, I think he had polio, so he couldn't walk properly. So, it was nasty stuff. She grabbed a phone from one of my members of staff who was on trying to explain something to a client who obviously was giving him some difficulty, and she then started shouting abuse down the phone and crying. So there was a whole number of these incidents, and I had spent a few days in London. I was on the executive of the Association of Personal Injury Lawyers, and I think it was one of their meetings I was at and doing other things in London, seeing clients. And I came back to the office sort of this week, the end of the second week, so there had been a few incidents I was aware of. By the time I got back, there was more and more being reported to me. Staff members in tears because of the way she'd spoken to them. So I brought her into the office and I said, look, this is not on. I put some of the stuff to her. I asked her about the phone line, and she said, no, I didn't do that. And then she said, oh, well, yes, I did, but I thought it was the right thing to do. So I just said, well, I don't think you're cut out for here. So I said to her, I'm afraid that's it. I paid her for the month. She'd only been there 2 weeks, and obviously I'd done nothing apart from cause complete havoc. And then she said, I'm not leaving. I'm going to phone the Law Society, I'm not leaving. And she then started shouting and screaming, running around the office, and eventually my cashier, Caroline, had to get one arm on either side of her and actually march her into the office. And she stood out there for at least half an hour screaming abuse. And that was when it all started. Thereafter, every day I'd come into the office, the answer phone would be full of messages, all from her, all threatening,
What
nasty.
kind of threats?
I'll get you, you're not going to get away with this, I'll get Jimmy away, all that sort of stuff. I know that sounds a bit weird, but the way it was said was in a very threatening manner.
And how many was she leaving?
Well, the answer phone would be filled up.
How many was that?
I'm not sure how many messages, but she would rant on. It would take probably about an hour's worth of
Every day?
Every day. And then when we amalgamated with the other firms, again, she did the same thing, not necessarily every day by that point. She grew a bit hot and cold, but it was pretty persistent for a couple of years. Also, years. She did this for nearly 5 years. So what she would do, given that way back in 1997, this was really at the start of the internet, so people weren't emailing to the same extent we do now. What she would do would be phone up other solicitors or send them faxes with defamatory stuff about me, saying how terrible I was, how terrible the firm was, accusing people of everything under the sun. And then, I would get phone calls from people I didn't know who would say, I'm really embarrassed. I've had this fax through from this woman. I don't know her, I don't know you, but I thought I ought to bring it to your attention. So I had issued the staff with panic alarms, right back at the beginning when all this started. Because, I had grown adults in tears, terrified that she was going to harm them, terrified that something awful was going to happen.
She also claimed that you and your husband, Jimmy, sadly no longer with us, but he accused you of assaulting your 3-year-old son, Frankie, who was born with a rare chromosomal disorder.
Well, that was the point at which I thought I can take you more of this. I had heard from a lawyer some months before that, who phoned me, who'd taken her on, and he said to me that he was in a terrible state because he fired her, and he went home that night to find 2 social workers at his door. The police were involved. It was all taken very seriously, and the accusation was that he'd been abusing his children. This went to the children's schools and so on. This man was on his knees and really upset. And I said, well, all I could do is perhaps speak to the sort of things she's done to me. So when I was going to go to the bar in 2003, I had to do some exams the year before that. So I went to Strathclyde University, and he was the first person I seen when I get to university to start doing a couple of classes, but her, I couldn't believe it, because at that point it had gone a bit quiet, and there she was, and from then on she followed me around the university. She would stand right up against beside me and so on. So I complained to the professor at the university, and again, stalking wasn't really taken that seriously by people. I think people just assume that it's 2 women who just don't get on or something like that. So he said, oh well, I've checked her records and she's not registered as a student here, so I put no focus over her. I said, well, if she's not registered as a student, can you not just throw her out, get security? So I don't like to do that. Now, by the end of the university year, I got letters to say that he apologised because she'd gone on to upset a number of members of staff, harass them, and other students. So she knew that I'd made a complaint about them. So one day, just after I made the complaint, I go home to find 2 social workers at my door, saying to me, some very serious allegations. So I said to them, well, come in. And I said, before you say anything to me, I said, and I do understand you've got a job to do, it's a very important job. I said, but I want to tell you what I think is going on here. So I explained to them about the other lawyer, explained to them everything, and they confirmed, oh yes, it's a woman who says that she's at university with you. Now, initially she gave false name of another student, but it wasn't the other student, we were contacted the other student. But to cut a long story short, she made 5 complaints to the social work department, eventually screaming at them down the phone, demanding that my severely disabled son be taken into care. But to my mind, that was the point at which I thought, no, enough is enough. I'm not having this. I'm not having this poor child believed in that way. So I contacted the police. The police didn't do anything. But I was a consultant to John and Miller solicitors, and so they going to interpret.
So this is, again, a crucial part of this. And before we get to the interim, I want to ask you, she said to me she wasn't let go from your firm, but instead she walked.
Well, she was walked out the door, I think, was it that way?
It certainly wasn't at her volition.
It wasn't at her volition.
She said she never had any legal proceedings or restraining orders against her. But you say, and you provided documentary evidence of this, that there wasn't an interim interdict against her. Now, just very simply explain what that is.
Well, in Scotland at the time, there was no procedure for harassment type cases. The only thing you could use was this procedure for interdict, which is when you want to try and get the court to stop something that you fear they may do. So that's the purpose of an interdict. Now, because often the circumstances can be acute, you can apply for an interim interdict, which means there's an initial hearing before a judge who decides whether, on the basis of the information, it's appropriate to grant what is essentially a restraining order or an interim interdict. So that was granted.
And And we've seen the documents to support that, both the claim and the fact that it was granted.
Yeah, so there's an issue that sets out all the circumstances on which you're asking the judge to find that there are grounds for concern.
Right.
And they're set out.
And it's basically what you've been detailing to me about the consistent, well, the terrible way she behaved in the office, and afterwards, even worse, obviously, many accusations against your husband, son, and so on. And what happened once that incident was issued?
Well, it was served on by sheriff officers, and then she had.
And again, just for viewers or hearers, the Sheriffdom of Glasgow and Strathkelvin of Glasgow, this is the initial writ here, and we've seen the following documentation leading to the granting of the instrument.
So I was contacted by the solicitors to say it had been granted by the sheriff, and that it was then served upon by the court order. She then had 21 days in which to put in a notice of intention to defend, which she didn't do, and she then would have had to put in defences. Now, what she says is that there is copy correspondence that I've sent you, where she contacted someone at Drummond Miller, one of the more senior partners there, who's now a judge. She contacted him to say that she wasn't going to send him a copy of the defences, and she was terribly busy, but she would get them in the next couple of days. She never put in any defences at all. So my solicitors then contacted the court some weeks later, having waited for all the appropriate time periods, and asked if they could, what would happen then. And basically they were told, well, the sheriff doesn't want to grant the permanent interdict against her until there is any further behaviour. So the interdict lasted for a year and a day, and knowing that she doesn't know anything about procedure and wasn't a qualified solicitor, we reckoned that she might not know that it wasn't actually going to be valid a year later. So it was valid for a year and a day. I never heard from her for 22 years, so the interim interdict did what I was hoping it would do. What we had agreed with the solicitors was that if she came back after a year and a day, we would just take out another interim interdict.
You never had to, because she
I never
disappeared.
had to, because she disappeared.
And what was that feeling like when she disappeared?
It was relief, absolute relief. I mean, I had enough on my plate. Jimmy had a stroke about a year after all this. I was looking after Frank, who was severely handicapped. Nobody knew at the time exactly what was wrong.
Do you think Jimmy's health was affected adversely by all the stress of this or not?
Jimmy was a pretty resilient guy, so no, I don't think so. I think he was more worried about me and about Frankie than he was about her harming.
I mean, to have social workers turn up at your door with that kind of allegation, your son is already pretty disabled. I think it's hard to imagine any worse thing for someone to do with something.
Well, exactly. And I was horrified. I couldn't believe that anyone could be so callous and cruel. It's one thing having a go at me. I didn't mind that to the same extent. And she called me a lot of names, she's continuing to do so.
Yes, she is. And your letter to me when you contacted me was, unfortunately for me, I'm now collateral damage, because Netflix allowed Miss Harvey to be so easily identifiable, which I think is inarguable. Have Netflix made any attempt to approach you?
Well, their solicitors spoke to me. They contacted somebody through the mail, and somebody who then contacted me and asked me would I speak to the lawyers. So I had a conversation with them. Really, what they wanted from me was a copy of the interim.
And when was this?
About a week ago I spoke to them.
A week ago, but you hadn't heard from them before?
I hadn't heard from them before that. Certainly nobody approached me to say there's going to be a story coming out in which it will be very obvious that you are one of the victims.
Do you think from that it would be correct to assume they may be panicking a bit, Netflix, about the fallout and all that?
Well, I really don't know. I can't speak.
This is very often they've asked you for documentary evidence to support something which is a major plank of their series.
Yeah. Well, I suppose they've got to show that what they have done is materially true or substantially true.
Was what they put in Baby Randy materially true about you?
Yes. Well, in the sense that there was a character who was a mother, that there was nothing of that in mind. But the thrust of it, which was that she was sacked from her offer and turned in her boss, that's true.
Yeah.
That somebody in it was a barrister, where that book comes from. And the bit about the sex stalker targeting the deaf child is absolutely clearly a reference taken along with everything
No
else.
question, and that's straight from the story.
Yeah.
Have you ever met Richard Gere?
No.
Because I put this question to her about how unusual it is to have somebody talking to different people, both of whom, by her estimation, are fantasizing as why would two people who have no contact with each other at all, Laura Ray and Richard Gere, why would they both portray you as a very unpleasant?
I don't know why Richard Gere has, but Laura Walker certainly considers going for parliamentary selection.
Two different, you get my point, two different people.
Yeah, but Richard Gere has people that. Richard Gere has used that as
Well, that's in the drama.
No.
Is when they find out that you had previously harassed this family.
I haven't glanced that.
When you saw that exchange, what went through your mind?
I was horrified. I mean, I've actually watched your interview a few times because the first time I saw it, I was in such shock watching her, seeing how it just brought it all back again. And I've watched it several times to see what is it she's saying about me. And it's unbelievable that after the things she did, that she can say she wasn't harassing her family. Of course she was harassing her family.
For many years.
For many years. For longer than Richard Gere.
When you've seen the fallout from the Netflix series plus my interview, particularly around the fact that she's adamant that she's never been caught, let alone admitted to stalking him or being convicted, and there is no apparent evidence she ever was convicted of any crime. What do you make of that? Because that goes right to the heart for many people of the integrity of Richard Gere's story.
It's hard to say really. I mean, I can't say whether she's got any convictions or not. I know that the newspapers have looked for them and can't find them. In Scotland, convictions can be spent after a certain number of
But it
years.
says that she was convicted, for example, for 4.5 years for what she did to you and your family.
Well, she wasn't convicted for that. I didn't press any kind of criminal charges.
So that is untrue.
So that's untrue.
I mean, again, back to Netflix's duty of care, they're making it very easy for both Fiona Harvey and you to be quickly identified.
Yeah.
And yet a material fact that she was sent to prison for 4.5 years for harassing you and your family, like it appears the same thing Richard Gere is saying about what happened to him, but neither of those things may be true.
Well, it doesn't appear they are true.
And you're a lawyer. It's quite a serious leap to go from somebody who may be harassing people, trolling a nasty, abusive person, to a convicted criminal. Do you think?
Right, I agree with you. I mean, I don't think for the sort of thing she did to me, even if I had pressed for some kind of criminal conviction, I don't think she would have got very long, if any kind of custodial sentence.
Would she now, you think, do the same thing? Have the laws tightened on this?
I don't think so. And I spoke to the police not so long ago and asked them about this, and certainly in Scotland the law hasn't changed in line with the way it has in England on stalkers. So it's still very difficult. Basically, the police say unless she actually comes up and physically attacks you, there's nothing you can do to protect you.
I was given the fact that journalists have been investigating whether she might be moving back to your area or looking for someone to live for her. How does that make you feel?
Frightened.
What do you think she might be capable of doing?
I don't know. I mean, I think one of the interesting things has been in all the press that has been about this, there's been a number of articles by psychiatrists who say that she probably has some kind of personality disorder. I don't know, I'm not a doctor. And that she may have some sort of delusional disorder. And that people with these kind of disorders actually believe everything they say. And that kind of, you know, in a weird way makes sense to me because she contradicted herself right, left and centre in your show. I have correspondence in which she contradicts herself, which she says doesn't exist. But I think she maybe genuinely does believe
Yes, I felt
in her own little parallel universe
I felt
this
that
is true.
she was peddling lines that she may believe, which is delusional, but that may be the case. But I also think that she may have a very legitimate case against Netflix, Richard Gere, Parker Films, if it turns out she's never been convicted of any crimes. Twice in that series, both in relation to you and Richard Gere, she's getting lengthy prison sentences for the stalking, and that doesn't appear to be true.
I agree with you, but I think what we then have to look at is what is that actually worth in terms of damages. So you have to prove that your reputation has been damaged. As far as I understand it, I'm not aware that Fiona has ever held down a job anywhere, so I don't think there's any claim for loss of earnings.
But she has got top lawyers now, both here and in the US, going after Netflix quite hard.
Well,
I think she has got a good case.
Well, I'm sure she may have a good case, but the question is then, certainly in Scotland, what would it be worth? You're looking at somebody who has a pattern of stalking, who stalked quite a number of people apart from myself. People have been coming out of the woodwork to me, fighting to come forward, but letting me know that they know what's going on.
Do you have any doubt that she is a dangerous stalker?
I have no doubt she's a dangerous stalker, no doubt whatsoever.
What has this being raped up done to you?
Well, it's made me very anxious. Certainly, it's every so often. I mean, every day I can't stop thinking about it, and I can't stop obsessively watching YouTube and all these different channels where people are exploring the ins and outs of it.
Because you didn't want to do an interview like this. You wanted this all just to, as it had been for a long time, just be part of the past. But you felt compelled to because everyone was talking about it.
Well, I'm an advocate. I've got a reputation to defend, and the sting of what she says about me is basically that I'm a liar and that I'm an incompetent lawyer. So that's not good news if you're an advocate in professional practice. And I certainly wouldn't want any of my clients, the solicitors who instruct me, or any clients I represent to think any of that is true.
Have you considered suing her?
Well, I am considering suing her, and certainly if Netflix give her £11 million, I'll be suing her. The problem is that if she has no money, reparation claims are very expensive to mount. There's very little point in suing her if she's got nothing.
Has Richard Gad made any attempts to reach out to you?
None at all.
Would you have expected him to?
Well,
I mean, without him putting all this onto first an Edinburgh show and then a smash hit Netflix series, it would never have come to this.
Well, I don't know what I would expect. I've never met him, and I can understand that he has written what I think is a very compelling TV series. He's done very well out of it, and I sort of wish him well on that. I do think that when he says that he changed all the details so that people wouldn't recognise her and she wouldn't recognise herself, but that is just untrue. I mean, he could easily have made her somebody who didn't look like Fiona Harvey, who was, say, an accountant or a doctor.
Story completely. I mean, one of the Netflix chief executives is the Netflix policy chief. He went into the UK Parliament several weeks ago and he said this.
Lady Ranger is an extraordinary story, and it is obviously a true story of the horrific abuse that the right wing protagonist Richard Gad suffered at the hands of a convicted stalker. We did take every reasonable precaution in disguising the real life identities of the people involved in that story.
Your response to that?
I disagree completely with what he says. It's just not the truth.
Do you feel better for doing an interview about this?
I do. I have to say it has made me feel much better because I feel I've got my point of view across and I can now just try and put this to bed and ignore it.
Have you been getting an adverse reaction from people?
Well, my colleagues and friends obviously not, and my colleagues at the bar have been very supportive. But certainly online I've had adverse comments. There's now a Fiona Harvey support group who are commenting that I look like a man and that I am Richard Gad's trans girlfriend, and they're suggesting that may be the case. And I'd like to refute both of those views.
Do you think she's capable of violence against you? Is that what worries you?
Well, that is what worries me, yes. I don't know what she's capable of because I don't even think she would remember thereafter. So I don't know what she is capable of. But if somebody threatens to kill you on several occasions just because they may have personality disorders, doesn't mean that they won't actually try and do it.
Do you think she might, or is capable of it?
Well, I seem to have been her major obsession over all these years, because it's lasted the longest with me. So I can quite see, depending on how you look at things, that she maybe sees me as some sort of enemy, and that really feels compelled to do something to harm me.
Do you have a message for her if she's watching?
Well, I think my message would be, I think you need to get think we need to get psychiatric help as soon as possible. And I think we need to get off Facebook and stop sending emails and so on to people because you're doing yourself no favours if you add into school experts.
All right, thank you very much.
Thank you.
This week on the True Geordie podcast, the man I idolised for my entire childhood. He was the Newcastle and England captain and the all-time... You alright? Hello. Premier League top goal scorer, and his name is Alan Shearer. Here, come here to me, come here to me. Oh, God. Here, come here, come here, come here. Here, shush. Oh. It's okay. One touch. She's bulletproof.
We don't know what's happened here. No one can give a legitimate explanation.
But you're clearly implying that it is odd. Yeah, go ahead. Tell me your lunatic conspiracy theory about how odd.
I don't have any.
You say to me,
I've been told by many experts in the last 36 hours.
There's an entire cultural machine that has lied. There's an entire cultural.
Absolutely zero sympathy. You sound almost gleeful, Desmond. I'm sorry. That makes you, frankly, despicable.
I'm not going to get on my knees and beg for forgiveness or show sympathy.
I'm asking for that. I'm asking you to condemn what happened as an egregious attack on democracy. Can you do that?
No, I won't.
You can't do that. See, so why the hell, frankly, Desmond, why the hell should we listen to a word you have to say? Former President Trump is the king of the political comeback, but even by his own lofty standards, the past 4 days have been utterly sensational. After coming within a hair's breadth of assassination, last night he made a stunning return to the spotlight of the RNC. For once, the gravity of the occasion was not lost on him.
J. Trump.
We are grateful for you to be our nominee for the 47th President of the United States of America.
But Trump hasn't made an entrance quite like that since he descended the golden escalator in 2015 to announce his first run for president. Bandaged and emotional, he walked into the arena like a UFC star and got the reception to match. Well, the many people who've criticised security failings at his rally on Saturday were quick to point out that his detail this time round seems to be made up entirely of strapping men. But the focus of the night was undoubtedly Trump himself, the man who now looks like he's seriously preparing for a return to running the country. President Biden, meanwhile, fumbled questions about his own incendiary rhetoric in the lead up to Saturday's shooting.
You called your opponent an existential threat. On a call a week ago, you said it's time to put Trump in the bullseye. There's some dispute about the context, but I think you appreciate
I didn't say crosshairs, that's all we focus on. Look, the truth of the matter was, what I guess I was talking about at the time was, there was very little focus on Trump's agenda.
Yeah, the term is bullseye.
Was it a mistake to use the word? I didn't say crosshairs, I meant bullseye, I meant focus on it. Focus on what he's doing.
Well, a pathetic excuse for, frankly, an increasingly pathetic president. Let's be crystal clear. Nobody thought Biden was talking about archery when he used the word bullseye, and he knows it. The presidential move would have been to say that everyone, on all sides, needs to dial down their incendiary rhetoric. But this president hasn't looked presidential for a long time now. One positive move Biden's made in the fallout from the tragedy on Saturday is to finally order the Secret Service to protect R.F. Kennedy Jr. The last thing America needs right now is yet more political violence, especially involving a Kennedy. Well, in a moment, we'll meet tonight's panel to debate all this, but joining me now is a former counter sniper in the State Department and the current Florida Republican Congressman Corey Mills. Corey Mills, thank you very much indeed for joining Uncensored. First of all, I can't think of anyone better equipped in the political world than you to comment on what appears to have been a massive failing by the Secret Service on Saturday in their duty to protect President Trump. What did you make of it?
Well, I just want to say I really love your monologue just now that talked about the idea of dialing down political rhetoric on both sides, as well as the dangers of utilizing words like in the bullseye or, regardless of what he says he went to indicate, it's obviously what he indicated was that he wants to put him in the crosshairs. But, I just want to go ahead and say that, this, in my opinion, is such a massive failure. It's such a big negligence on behalf of the advanced teams to say that a target, which is 160 yards away, perfectly adjacent to the stage, was outside the perimeter. The perimeter is formed and it's discerned by the counter sniper teams, by the advanced teams, and by the security details. I can tell you, as someone who has conducted thousands of advances, both on the Afghan and Iraq side, as well as for back home, has done multiple counter sniper team deployments, looking at overwatch positions, looking at how we react and mitigate threats, that this in its entirety, and I'm not a conspiracist, Pierce. I'm not one who tries to find my way to a inside job type of setup, but I'm also a military guy who believes in the what if scenarios of all things. I think the American people deserve a true investigation, not by the FBI, but by Congress, to look and identify every single area from local force consolidation, from looking at the cooperations that were on the ground, from resource allocations by the director of the Secret Service. And I think that people deserve to feel confident that this wasn't anything but massive malice or negligence as opposed to something that was intentional.
Yeah, I completely agree. I mean, there's some extraordinary details emerging. The local news network in Pittsburgh has reported a member of Beaver County, Pennsylvania's emergency services unit noticed this suspicious man on the roof near the rally at 5:45 p.m., called it in and took a picture of the person, the shooter, 26 minutes before he was able to fire off 8 shots. There's then the footage, as we see, of other members of the public seeing him crawling across the rooftop. There's also snipers who are in position who appear to be looking at this guy too, and yet he's still able to fire 8 bullets, which seems completely extraordinary to me, especially if it's all happening 150 meters from the President Trump, who has been president and may well be again.
Well, it seems very suspicious. You know, in police work, they call these clues. The thing that really was sounding off to me, though, is the fact that, you know, at a minimum, let's just go ahead and give every single possibilities of just negligence as opposed to something else. You know, you could have put and said, there's not enough resources. All right, fine. Let's put a patrol car in the parking lot of AGR, which is a company with the doors locked and the lights on. There's a deterrence. Let's look at the fact that an emergency comms channel should have been set in place for the Secret Service and the local police force in cooperation and coordination, so that when that officer who came to the rooftop and says that he had the rifle pointed at him could have immediately descended, keeping himself safe, and also said, shoot on the roof, shoot on the roof, shoot on the roof, which would allow the detail to have then immediately gotten on the stage to protect the president. There's so much about this, Pierce, not to mention there was a water tower that was only a couple hundred yards away, which is a sniper's paradise that people aren't even talking about. This shot, Pierce, is so simple, and I just want to paint a picture for your viewers, which is that if you were to take not even a sniper rifle, but your basic production rifle that comes off an assembly line you can buy in a average store, and you were to take a person with very little experience, in 10 minutes, I could train them to be able to utilize this rifle to hit targets at high-sized plates at 200 yards without a problem.
Well, actually, I mean, just on that point, when I was at CNN, I spent a day down in Texas at a gun store, a gun range, and I did end up firing an AR-15, which is believed to be the semi-automatic rifle that shooters use, and is the preferred weapon of choice for most mass shooters these days. And I was absolutely staggered about how light and easy it was to use, and how very quickly, how accurate I was able to fire it, never having fired guns in my entire life. So I can completely endorse what you just said. It is a very easy to use weapon. And he was so
It's
close.
also it's one that within, if you think about it, we call it minutes of angle on each rifle, which means that's essentially, it looks at your bullet trajectory, your bullet compensation, all these different things. But what you would say is that at 100 yards, you have a 1-inch grouping capability, at 200, 2-inch, et cetera, which means that at 160 yards, that rifle, let's just say it's not even a good rifle, it's only a 2 MOA rifle, is only shooting a 3.2-inch grouping. The average head is 6'8". The average shoulder is 20 inches long. The average head to waist is 40 inches. So when you think about this is a game of milliseconds and millimeters that saved the president's life from being attempted to an actual assassination, this is really something that I hate to say it, I have to just be like this, but it's got to be divine intervention to the top thoughts that this didn't eliminate and take out the life of Donald Trump, and the fact that it should have been prevented from the beginning.
Like one night, when everyone was in bed, there was a knock at the door.
May the Lord protect you from harmful sea creatures and dangerous pirates.
Oh, no.
Oh, bastards. We're not going to help them.
Can't be moved now and put all of your lives at risk, and I cannot do that.
Whatever wreckage can float, we'll stay close to them.
I've seen evil trying to get in here.
They can't break free if you hammer iron nails into their feet.
I haven't done that shit. It was a terrible tragedy. He doesn't care. I wouldn't sleep if I were you. A thing like that never stops.
So that you need to ask for forgiveness for what we did.
It won't stop until it's taken all of us. We should not be here.
Oh, it's what actress.
other thing that struck me as extraordinary in terms of the way the Secret Service responded to the shooting was that after the president was hit, they dragged him to the floor, but they then allowed him to stand back up. And one of the female agents in front of him was clearly a lot shorter than Donald Trump. And therefore his whole sort of upper torso, including his head, was clearly visible to potentially other shooters who may have been in the area, which nobody knew at the time. That does not strike me as normal Secret Service protocol.
Well, you know, they did a good job of putting the body barrier on, but I will note that prior to actually having the president stand up, you hear one of the Secret Service officers ask, is shooters down, shooters down. So they at least were looking at the existing and the obvious threat as being mitigated. And so that is kind of within protocol. I do understand your concern as well, which is mine, which is that there wasn't enough to actually body shield if you look at the height and the size of President Trump with someone else. This is why, and I don't mean this to be, you know, kind of hyperbolic or that it's trying to be a rhetoric to try and spin things up, but this is why when we look at the ideas of the DEI, the diversity, equity, inclusion, it does put things at risk. We say we need a percentage of X, right? Because DEI can mean DIE. We have to think about the fact that it should be about meritocracy, and especially when you're talking about the protection of the president or other lives.
Well, it was very striking to me that last night when Trump appeared at the RNC convention, it was a wild applause, an amazing scene. He looked quite emotional, actually. But he was surrounded by a far bigger number of Secret Service agents, all of whom appeared to be very big, tall men.
Well, I think that you see where the entire RNC, and especially here in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, has really ramped up their security protocols, and for obvious reasons. Sometimes it is a bit of a knee-jerk where they overcompensate for a failure in the past, and I think that's what they've done in some cases here when it comes to RNC. But certainly the president, he definitely needs this protection. I agree with you. There was a different look in the president, a look of unification, a look not of fear but defiance, and the fact that we have to understand he also saved his own life. He did exactly what he was trained to do, which is that when you take fire, even from a tactical perspective in the military, otherwise, you drop to the ground, you minimize your silhouette, and then you go ahead and look at where the actual target or what we call reactive contact drill is to mitigate the threat. What the president does in his actual hour, you know, moments after the incident is truly remarkable. You know, I've trained with people who the fight or flight reaction of individuals, even being trained, they get stunned and freeze, you know, in the event of getting hit or getting shot. The president understood and really stood in defiance, and he wanted to also let the American people know he was okay by putting his fist in the air and saying, fight. He meant that not in a way to try and keep certain shots, but fight for America, fight for the public, fight for what is right. And I can tell you that we need to, in the world, take it down and think about the fact that words matter. The things that we say, we have to start thinking about cumulative qualities of people and put political ideology aside and realize that we're husbands.
You know, I give her the floor. Well, start showing you.
Right, see you in a minute.
Here, one.
Oh, but I can't take it, it's stuck in my hand.
All right. I mean, you see her on the thing? Actually,
Oh, yeah, I know, I was looking, yeah.
Wait, actually, hang on. Hang on.
It's just firing around the door, that is.
A little bit.
Hello.
No, if it was gone. Responded, even attention from my husband.